I moved into that apartment in the fall of 2020. It was supposed to be a fresh start. I had just gotten out of a toxic relationship, had enough savings for a few months, and landed a remote job doing freelance editing work. The apartment wasn't fancy. In fact, it was cheap even for the area. A one-bedroom unit on the top floor of an old 3-story building in a quiet part of town. No elevator, just a narrow stairwell that creaked under every step. But I didn't care. It was mine. And after everything I'd been through, I needed solitude. The building had this strange mix of long-time tenants and short-term renters. Most people kept to themselves. I'd nod at a few in the hallway, but nobody ever lingered to talk. That suited me fine. The layout was simple. Kitchen near the entrance, living room with a big window that overlooked the alley, small hallway that led to the bedroom and bathroom. The floors were old hardwood, warped in places, and the ceiling? Tiles in the kitchen had some water stains, but I liked the character. It felt lived in. I signed a 6-month lease without thinking twice. The first 2 weeks were calm. I set up my workspace by the window, got into a routine, made coffee every morning, and tried to forget the months before. I liked hearing the occasional hum of a neighbor's TV through the walls or footsteps on the stairs. It made me feel less alone without having to engage. But then, one morning, I noticed something odd when I left to grab my usual takeout coffee. I spotted deep, uneven scratches near the bottom of my apartment door. 3 parallel marks, jagged and slightly diagonal, as if someone or something had dragged claws or nails across it. They were fresh. The wood shavings were still on the floor. I crouched down and ran my fingers over them. The grooves were rough. It looked like someone had done it in a hurry, or with shaking hands. At first, I laughed it off. Probably just a bored kid from another unit, or maybe even someone moving furniture down the narrow hall. I shrugged and left it alone, but that wasn't the last time I saw them. 3 days later, they were deeper. Not just that, there were more of them. Now 5 parallel scratches, starting from the same spot, but this time reaching a few inches higher on the door. I stood there, staring at them, my keys frozen in my hand. Something about it felt intentional, like it was trying to get in, or trying to tell me something. I remember checking the hallway. It was empty, dead silent, except for the hum of a distant television. I knocked on the neighbor's door. Across from mine, an old woman I'd never spoken to before. No answer. I went back inside and tried to convince myself it was nothing. I tried. That night, I couldn't sleep. There was this heaviness in the apartment, like the air was thick. I tossed and turned, and just as I was finally drifting off, I heard something. A faint sound, like a scrape, a whisper of metal on wood. I froze, sat up, held my breath. It came again. Scrape. From the hallway. From my door. I grabbed my phone, checked the time, 3:42 a.m. I tiptoed out of bed, crept down the hallway, and stood a few feet from the front door. The noise had stopped. I didn't look through the peephole. I don't know why, but some primal instinct in me screamed not to. Just wait. Just listen. I stood there for 10 minutes, heart hammering in my chest, staring at the door. Eventually, I went back to bed. Didn't sleep. In the morning, the scratches were worse. They had climbed halfway up the door. 5 long, frenzied slashes deep into the wood. One of them had nearly gone all the way through. Something or someone had been trying to get in. Asterisk. It started on a Wednesday night. I remember because I was folding laundry on the couch. Reruns of some old sitcom playing in the background, the kind you leave on for comfort. My apartment was silent except for the canned laughter and the tumbling sound of clothes in the dryer. I had just finished folding a pile of t-shirts when I noticed something off. Not a noise, not a sight, just a feeling. It was subtle at first, like static electricity building in the air, crawling across the skin on the back of my neck. I brushed it off. Long workday, too much caffeine. I told myself I was just tired. That was until I walked past the front door and caught a glimpse of something new. Scratches, thin, shallow, and curved like claw marks. They weren't there earlier in the day. I was sure of it because I had stopped to pick up a delivery that afternoon. Now, they carved a faint arc into the dark wood, just above the handle. I reached out, running my fingers along the grooves. Fresh. No dust had settled into them. The wood flaked slightly under my nails. My first instinct was to think of an animal. Maybe a stray cat had gotten in somehow, scratched at the door. But I lived on the 3rd floor of a locked building. No pets. No visitors. Just me. I opened the door and looked out into the hallway. Nothing. Silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that presses into your ears and makes your pulse feel louder than it should. I stared down the corridor, left and right. No sounds. Number. Footsteps. No doors closing. Just that humming silence and the dim yellow light buzzing overhead. I closed the door and locked it again, this time engaging the deadbolt and the chain. That night, I had trouble sleeping. The next morning, I went to work and tried to forget about it. I figured it had some reasonable explanation. Maybe someone in the building had been drunk, tried the wrong door. Maybe kids. But that night, the scratches were deeper. 3 long marks, almost symmetrical, just below the peephole. They hadn't been there that morning. I was sure of it. I dropped my keys onto the floor when I saw them, and they clattered so loud I swore someone would come check on me. But nobody did. I stared through the peephole. Nothing. Just the empty hallway again. But that sensation was back. The buzzing. The static hum pressing against my skull. It felt like the air outside the door was charged with something that didn't belong. Something that wasn't part of this world. I didn't sleep that night either. Around 2:34 a.m. I remember the time exactly because I glanced at my alarm clock. I heard it for the first time. Knock. Soft. Too soft for someone trying to get your attention, but loud enough to be intentional. It came in 3 beats. Knock. 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 I sat up in bed, heart thudding in my chest. I didn't move for almost 5 full minutes. I just listened. Nothing followed. No footsteps. No voice. No more knocks. The next day, I checked with my neighbors. Apartment 3C was empty. The tenant had moved out weeks ago. The old woman in 3 hadn't heard anything. She just stared at me and said, "Are you feeling well, dear? You look pale." Maybe I did. I took photos of the scratches. I didn't know why. Some survival instinct, maybe. If anything happened, I wanted someone to believe me. The next night, it knocked again. This time, louder, firmer. The same rhythm. Knock. 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 I walked slowly to the door, barefoot on the cold hardwood. I didn't speak. I just stood in front of it, staring at the handle, the peephole, the lock. My breath felt heavy in my chest. My ears rang with a strange high-pitched hum, almost like tinnitus, but deeper, darker. I pressed my eye to the P-E-E-P-H-O-L, E.nothing. Then. The knocking came again, right as I was looking, but no one was there. Felt something push against the other side of the door. Not a knock this time. A presence, a pressure. As if something leaned against the wood, matching my breath. Close. Too close. I stumbled back, fell to the floor, scrambled into the kitchen. I grabbed the knife from the drying rack. My hands were shaking so badly, nearly dropped it. But then everything stopped. Silence again. That buzzing silence that felt like it wasn't really silent at all. Like it was hiding something. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with the knife, staring at the door until sunrise. In the morning, there were more scratches. Not deep, but higher, near the top of the frame. Far too high for a person's hand, unless they were tall. Or unless they weren't using hands. My lease had 6 months left. I didn't have money to move. So I stayed. But I started marking the days on my wall with red Sharpie. Each new scratch, each knock, each sleepless night. I even started recording the hallway with my phone, pointing it through the peephole while I pretended to sleep. Nothing ever showed up, but the knocking never stopped. Knock, knock, every night, between 2 and 3 a.m. Always 3 knocks. And it started getting harder to sleep. Every creak of the building now had weight. The pipes groaning in the walls felt deliberate, like breath being held and released. The refrigerator's hum transformed into something guttural, vibrating in sync with my spine. Even the shadows seemed to cling to corners longer than they should. I started leaving lights on bathroom, hallway, even the oven light. It didn't help. Each night brought something new. One night, I heard scratching again, this time from inside the apartment, from the living room. My eyes flew open, heart racing. I laid there frozen, praying it was my imagination. Then I heard it again. Scrape, pause, scrape, slow and rhythmic, like someone dragging their nails across the hardwood floor. I gathered the courage to get up, armed with a flashlight. My baseball bat sat near the bedroom door. I grabbed it. I turned the corner. Empty. My front door was closed, double locked. Windows sealed. Nothing. But the air was cold again, like that first night. My breath fogged. And just as I turned off the flashlight, the hallway light behind me flickered and died. Complete silence. Then came a whisper, not words, just a breath. Not from outside. From behind me, I spun, nothing there, but my skin was crawling. I slept. In the bathtub that night, clutching the bat, curtain pulled shut. The next morning, I found a message under my door. A piece of paper. No return address. Just one line. Why did you leave me? I don't know why, but my stomach dropped. My hands shook as I read it again. It wasn't addressed to me by name, but it felt personal. I called my landlord again, asking if there had ever been any incidents in my apartment. He brushed me off. Old buildings creak. Maybe you need some air, he said. I asked if anyone had ever died here. He hung up. I started digging. Public records, police logs, anything I could find. That's when I stumbled on a report an old tenant, years ago, disappeared. Her name was Mia Langford. Lived in Unit 309, my unit. Her file had been sealed. No cause of death. No official statement. Just gone. The last line in the report read, neighbor reports persistent scratching noises before disappearance. My blood ran cold. I needed to talk to someone. I knocked on the neighbor's door across the hall. An older man answered Mr. Keene. When I asked about Maya, he didn't hesitate. You're in 309? He asked. I nodded. He looked over his shoulder before stepping out, closing the door behind him. She was sweet, too kind. Heard things. Said someone was trying to talk to her through the walls. I asked about the scratches. He nodded solemnly. Every night, I heard it too. After she vanished, it stopped. Until you moved in. I felt my knees go weak. That night, I didn't sleep. At 2:14 a.m., the scratching came back. This time, it wasn't the floor or the door. It was the walls. The walls groaned, scratched, breathed. I pressed my ear to the drywall. I swear, I heard. Sobbing. Soft, broken sobs, like a child hiding in a closet. Then the screaming started. Not a normal scream. Not from outside. from the walls, from all directions. A sound so high and piercing, it made my teeth ache. I covered my ears, fell to the floor, tears streaming down my face. It stopped suddenly like a switch flipped. Silence. Then 3 knocks. On the inside of my bedroom closet, I couldn't move. The door creaked open by itself. Darkness. No one was there. But on the inside of the closet door, scratched deeply into the wood, were the words, "I'm still here." Asterisk. I barely remember how. I got from the hallway back into my apartment. My hands were trembling so violently, I dropped the keys 3 times trying to lock the door. When the deadbolt finally slid into place, I stumbled back like I'd sealed away a monster. But I knew better now. Whatever this was, it wasn't staying outside anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I sat cross-legged on my couch, a knife in one hand and my phone in the other. I stared at the door. Every creak in the walls, every groan of the old building, sounded like footsteps, like breathing, like something dragging itself across the floor toward me. Around 3 a.m., I made a decision. I opened the camera app on my phone, set it to video, and placed it in the corner of the living room, aimed directly at the front door. I figured if anything happened, if I fell asleep or passed out, I'd at least catch it on film. Proof, or maybe just confirmation that I'd lost my mind. The next morning, the phone was dead. No footage, no explanation. Just drained battery and a lingering sense of dread. Later that day, I went to a local hardware store and bought a motion sensor light. If something moved near the door, it would turn on. A small comfort, but I needed something. I mounted it above the inside of the doorway, right next to the peephole. That night, I sat up again, this time armed with a baseball bat, the knife, and a flashlight. At exactly 1:42 a.m., the motion light flicked on. No sound, no knock, no scratching. Just the blinding light, illuminating the inside of my door as if something stood just beyond it. I crept forward, heart hammering. Looked through the peephole. Nothing, but the light stayed on for exactly 13 minutes. The next few nights followed a pattern. Silence, then the light. Then nothing. Until night 5. That night, I woke up. Yes, I had finally allowed myself to sleep at 2:11 a.m., not because of the light, but because I heard something. A voice. No words, just a sound like wet breathing, mixed with a groan. Faint, but definitely real. I froze in bed, too terrified to move. Then, louder, closer, it spoke. It said my name. In a voice that was almost mine. I couldn't even scream. My body refused to obey. I felt my bladder release, and I didn't even care. I lay there paralyzed, eyes wide in the dark, as something shuffled past my bedroom door. Then silence again. When morning came, I found something that nearly made me vomit. In the middle of my living room floor was a key. Not my apartment key. Not any key I recognized, but old, rusted, cold to the touch, and tied to it was a small bundle of what like hair. I bagged it in a Ziploc and drove to the police station. They didn't even file a report. Sighed maybe a prank. Maybe someone slipped in while I was sleeping. They took the key and the hair for review, but I never got a follow-up. The detective who spoke to me barely met my eyes. That same night, I noticed something on my door I hadn't seen before. Scratches on the inside. Deep ones. 3 distinct claw marks carved into the wood, as if something had been trying to escape. From my side, I moved out the next day. Packed only what I could fit in my car. Left furniture, dishes, everything else behind. The landlord didn't argue. In fact, he barely looked surprised. As I turned in the keys, he said something I'll never forget. You lasted longer than the last one. I asked him what he meant. but he just smiled. I moved across the city to a high-rise building with security, cameras, and noise anything to drown out the memory of that door. I didn't tell anyone the full story. How could I? It sounded like the ramblings of someone unwell. Maybe I was. Weeks passed. No scratches, no lights, no voices. I started to believe I had left it behind. That maybe the apartment was cursed or haunted, or simply the nesting ground for some nameless nightmare that only wanted me while I was within its walls. But nightmares don't need walls. One night, I was brushing my teeth when I heard a dull, soft knock from my front door. My heart dropped. I stood frozen, toothbrush still in my mouth. Another thump came, then silence. I gathered the courage to approach, staring at the door like it might explode. I leaned toward the P-E-E-P-H-O-L. No one, but something was different. A smell, something metallic, old, like rust or dried blood. It came from under the door, curling into my nose, slow and steady. I turned the deadbolt and backed away. In the morning, there were no signs of a knock, no notes, no gifts, but on the doorframe, carved in tiny, almost imperceptible letters, was my name repeated over and over again, 100 times, maybe more, as if someone had been whispering it with a knife all night long. I moved again, farther this time. New name on the lease. New everything. But the dreams didn't stop, in each one. I'm back in that apartment. The door is open. I'm standing in the hallway, and something is waiting in the dark. I never see it. I only hear it breathing louder and louder until I wake up gasping, soaked in sweat. And last week, while unpacking boxes in this new place, I found something I know I didn't bring with me. In the bottom of a drawer that used to be empty was that same old key, rusty, cold, with the same knotted strand of black hair tied to its loop. I didn't scream. I just stared at it, and then, without even thinking, I whispered, I single here, and somewhere behind me. I swear I heard it answer. I was 22 when I moved into the old farmhouse. I hadn't planned on living alone, but life has this way of rearranging things without your permission. My grandfather had passed away that spring, leaving behind a decaying property in this remote backwoods of Kentucky. My mother wanted to sell it, but I saw something in the place, a kind of quiet, a solitude that felt like safety at the time. I just graduated from college, wasn't ready for the corporate cage, and didn't have much tying me to the city. So I told her I'd fix the place up myself, live there for a few months, maybe even flip it for more than she was asking. She agreed, under the condition that I kept my phone charged and checked in often. Seemed like a fair trade. The house sat at the end of a narrow gravel road that barely counted as a driveway. The nearest town, if you could call it that, was about 35 minutes away. No neighbors for miles. The woods that surrounded the property were dense, wild, and old. The kind of old that doesn't make you feel welcome. The house itself was 2 stories, pale green paint peeling from the wood siding, shutters hanging. Loose, a porch swing that still moved sometimes when there was no wind. The backyard sloped down into an overgrown field, and past that, the trees swallowed everything. It was the kind of place you wouldn't stumble upon. You had to be looking for it. I moved in mid-July. The air was heavy with heat and insects. The nights, oddly enough, were cold. I'd fall asleep with sweat on my chest and wake up needing a hoodie. The plumbing worked. The power, surprisingly, did too, but the house creaked. Not the usual old house groans. This was something else. You could feel it in the floorboards and the walls, like the place was constantly adjusting itself, breathing even when you weren't. The first few days were peaceful. I'd spend the mornings clearing debris from the yard, cutting back brush. and trimming the sagging tree limbs that loomed over the roof. Afternoons were for interior work, sanding, painting, repairing broken fixtures. The nights were when I wrote. I'd always loved writing, short stories mostly, horror fiction. This place felt like the perfect backdrop. It wasn't until the sixth night that something felt ... off. I'd gone to bed around midnight. There was no internet, and the cell signal was so weak I could only send texts if I stood by the upstairs window and held my phone up like a fool. So I read books, scribbled ideas, and tried to embrace the disconnect. That night, I woke up suddenly. Not because of a noise, but because of the absence of one. The cicadas were silent. That probably sounds strange, but out there, in that thick wall of trees, the bugs never shut up, not during summer. It was like a constant electric buzz. Until that moment, I sat up in bed, ears ringing in the quiet. I looked at my phone. 3:03 a.m. and I heard it. A knock. 3 soft knocks. Not loud. Not aggressive, but distinct. They came from the back door downstairs. I froze. You don't expect anyone at your door at that hour, especially not in the middle of nowhere. I waited, listened. Nothing. I told myself it was the house. Maybe the wind, maybe a raccoon or a branch falling. I went back to sleep eventually, but uneasily. The next morning, I checked the porch. Nothing there. No footprints, no marks, not even disturbed dust on the doormat. I laughed it off. Wrote it down in my notebook as a potential story idea. A classic knocking at 3 a.m. trope. Creepy, but harmless. Until it happened again. And again. Every night. Always at exactly 3:03 a.m. 3 knocks. Just 3. I never saw anyone. Never caught a glimpse of movement through the glass. But I began waking up moments before it happened, as if my body had started anticipating it. I started locking all the doors. I blocked the windows with old sheets. I even nailed a few shut. But no matter what I did, the knocks kept coming, like clockwork. Always the same, quiet, patient, deliberate. I stopped sleeping through the night. The days became blurry. I was exhausted, but also obsessed. I tried staying awake with coffee, energy drinks, cold showers. I'd sit on the staircase with a flashlight and a knife. Absurd, I know, just waiting for whoever was messing with me. But when the knocks came, and I ran downstairs, there was never anyone there. Just silence, and that cold, still air that seemed to freeze the insects in the trees. I started recording with my phone. I'd leave it pointed at the door all night, but the recordings always came back blank. The knocks wouldn't register. No sound. Just static or silence during those minutes. And then, one night, I woke up to find the back door wide open. That's when I knew it wasn't just in my head. The lock was still in place, untouched. There were no signs of forced entry. But the door, heavy, swollen with humidity, the kind you have to push hard to open, was standing ajar. Just enough to see the black beyond. I should have left right then. I didn't. I wanted answers. So I set a trap. The following night, I piled furniture in front of the back door. Chairs, boxes, an old coffee table. I left pots and pans hanging on string as makeshift alarms. I sat on the stairs again, flashlight and phone in hand. I waited. And at 3:03 a.m., I heard it again. 3 knocks, but this time, they came from the front door. The front door. That sound, it echoed differently than the back door. It was more hollow, less muffled. I sat frozen on the staircase, flashlight clenched in my grip, pulse rattling against my throat. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I hadn't prepared. For that door. It was the timing that unnerved me the most. Always 3 knocks. Always at 3:03 a.m. As if whatever was doing this knew I tried to block the back, and it adapted. That meant it was watching. That meant it was aware. I crept toward the front room, moving as silently as I could, though the old floorboards betrayed me with every step. I crouched low by the doorway that led to the entrance hall. The light from the porch lamp bled through. The frosted glass at the top of the door, illuminating faint shadows in the foyer. No movement. I waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Nothing. Finally. I flicked on the flashlight and stepped forward, heart pounding. I twisted the knob. Locked. I pressed an ear to the wood. Silence. Then I opened it. The porch was empty. Wet with rain, glistening, silent. No footprints. No cars. No signs of anything, but the air smelled wrong. Like sulfur and burnt metal. And it was cold. Much colder than it should have been. I closed the door and locked it, then double-locked it, then dragged the hall table in front of it. The next day, I barely moved. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. I didn't eat. I didn't speak. I didn't even check my phone that night. I nailed the front and back doors shut. At 3:03 a.m., the knocks came. This time from the side door, the one that led to the laundry room. I never used again. 3 knocks. Again, deliberate, not rushed, not angry, just persistent. The next morning, I removed the doorknob and hammered a board across it. I was running out of doors. That afternoon, I drove into town. I needed to be around people to feel something normal again. I stopped at a diner. The waitress, an older woman with tired eyes, asked if I was okay. I told her I wasn't sleeping well. She said something strange then, something that stuck in my bones. "This time of year?" she said, pouring me coffee. "You're not the only one." I asked what she meant. She gave a shrug, then added, "Lots of folks out near the woods get bothered, especially in the old houses." Bothered. She wouldn't elaborate. When I asked if she'd heard of knocking at night, she just tightened her lips and walked away. I didn't stay long. Back at the house, I considered leaving for. Good. But something about the pattern, the timing, had me hooked. I felt like I was circling the edge of a truth I couldn't name. A puzzle with no picture. And I needed to know why it had chosen me. That night, I stayed up again. All the doors locked. All the windows locked. The house was a fortress. Or so I thought. At 3:03 a.m., I didn't hear a knock. I heard scratching. It came from inside the walls. Soft at first, then louder, like nails dragging along old wood. It moved up from the kitchen, through the living room, down the hall, then up the stairs. I couldn't move. I sat on the edge of the bed, every muscle tensed, ears straining. The scratching stopped just outside my door. Then silence. Then 3 knocks. Not on the door, from inside the closet. I stood. Every part of me screamed to run, but my legs moved forward, as if pulled. I opened the closet slowly. Nothing. Empty. But the smell, that awful sulfur and metal scent. It poured out of the dark like a fog. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, I found something new. On the inside of the closet door, 3 long scratches, deep, as if made by claws, and beneath them, a smudge, a handprint, but not quite human. Too long. Too thin, too many joints. The print was dark, almost black. It smelled like copper, and fire. I cleaned it, bleached it, scrubbed it until my hands ached, but I couldn't get rid of it. That night, I didn't wait in bed. I sat in the hallway with a flashlight, knife, and recorder. I didn't expect it to help, but I needed to try. At 3:03 a.m., the lights flickered, all of them. Then silence. No knocks. No scratching. No footsteps. Just pressure like something massive was pressing down on the roof, on the walls, on my chest. I couldn't breathe. Then, a voice whispered from behind me right in my ear. It said only 2 words. I'm inside. I didn't sleep at all that night. After the encounter at the abandoned fire tower, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me home, that the silence in the woods wasn't truly empty. Every sound outside my window made me flinch. The wind brushing past the siding, the creak of old wood expanding in the cold, the crunch of dead leaves outside, soft and deliberate. Like footsteps trying not to be footsteps, I laid in bed with my back to the window, too afraid to turn and look, because deep down I already knew what I'd see. A face watching again. At some point, I must have passed out from exhaustion, because the next thing I remember was sunlight slicing through my blinds like a blade. But the relief was temporary. I checked the front door, locked. Checked the back door, locked. But when I stepped out onto the porch, I saw it, the same damn boot print fresh in the dirt, facing the house. I called in sick to work that day. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't think about anything except that footprint and the heavy certainty that I was being hunted. I wasn't even sure if it was human. I pored over old articles online, Reddit threads, obscure blogs about cryptids, stalkers, escaped lunatics. But none of it gave me what I needed. Answers. Only more questions. Only more fear. I drove back out to the fire tower that afternoon. I needed to see it again in daylight, to confirm that I wasn't losing my mind. The road in was even worse during the day. I saw things I hadn't noticed at night. Claw marks on tree trunks, long and erratic, like someone swinging a blade in rage. Animal carcasses picked clean in strange patterns. And once, I swear I saw bones hanging from fishing line, swaying gently from a branch, as if to mark territory. The fire tower was exactly as I remembered, weather-beaten, groaning in the wind. As I climbed the stairs, I noticed something odd. On every third step, there was a small smear of what like ash, like someone had tracked soot up with them. Or maybe something worse. I reached the top. The door was open again. Inside. It smelled like rot, but different than before. No, it was fresher. Like something had been here after me. The journal I'd found before was gone. Instead, something new lay on the floor. A Polaroid. My house. Taken from outside. At night. And in the corner of the photo, just barely visible in the shadows, was a shape. A silhouette. Human-shaped, but wrong. Too tall. Arms that looked too long. A head cocked at an unnatural angle. Who the hell took this? And how did they get inside this tower to leave it for me? I left immediately. Drove home with the photo stuffed in my glove compartment. My stomach was in knots the entire way. That night, I didn't sleep either. I sat on the couch with all the lights on, clutching a fireplace poker like it would protect me from the thing out there. If it was even a thing. Maybe it was a man. Maybe it was both. Around 2 a.m., I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. From the bedroom. Window. Not knocking. Not banging. Just tapping. Measured. Rhythmic. Like Morse code. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared straight ahead, telling myself not to look. Not to look. But the fear was worse than the knowing. So I turned. The blinds were slightly parted, and in that sliver of darkness, I saw it. A face, not pressed against the glass. Floating. Inches from it. Motionless. Eyes wide. A grin that didn't move. Just lips stretched into an obscene smile. Teeth yellow and long, as if smiling caused pain. And then it blinked. And vanished. No footsteps. No noise. Just gone. I called the cops again. This time, I didn't care if they thought I was crazy. I needed someone to witness this. To confirm it was real Dot when the officer arrived, I showed him the Polaroid. He took it, asked where I found it. I told him. He stared at it for a long time and said, "You said this was left at the tower?" I nodded. He glanced back down at the photo, then handed it to me and said, "Sir, this picture isn't of your house. What do you mean?" He pointed to the background. "Look at the street sign. That's Red Hill Road. That's 5 miles from your address." I felt the blood drain from my face. I'd never been to Red Hill Road, but someone there had taken a picture of a house identical to mine. Or maybe it was a copy, a replica. I didn't sleep for the third night in a row. Instead, I printed out the photo, zoomed in on the background, and began scanning it for details. I cross-referenced satellite images, street names, anything I could. And eventually, I found it. A cabin, deep in the forest, on a dead-end road, listed as condemned. No owners on record. I knew I had to go. Not because I was brave, but because I knew the thing watching me wanted me to. The fourth night, I didn't hear tapping. Instead, I heard footsteps on the roof. Then whispering. Not in English. Not even in words. Just sounds. Like breathing trying to form language. Pressed record on my phone and captured it. And when I played it back, the app showed a strange glitch. It had tagged the audio as multiple voices detected, but I had only heard one. The next day, I drove to the address. Red Hill Road was narrower than I thought. Trees crowded overhead like a canopy, blotting out the sun. And at the very end of the road was a house, just like mine. Same porch. Same window placements. Same crooked mailbox. It even had the same welcome mat I bought from Target 3 years ago. It was like someone had studied my life and rebuilt it in secret. Parked 100 feet back and approached on foot. The door was ajar. Inside was pitch black. I stepped inside. And immediately I smelled it again. Rot. Not just animal. Something worse. And then I heard something. Upstairs. A scraping sound, like fingernails. On wood. Then a low voice. Humming. A tune I remembered from childhood. Something my mother used to hum when she was scared. I turned to run, but the door had closed behind me. The door was shut tight behind me. I didn't remember hearing it close. No creak, no slam, no latch. It was just shut, like the house was swallowing me whole. Like it had decided that now I belonged inside. I tried the knob. Locked. Deadbolt. 2. I pulled harder, whispering to myself that this wasn't real, that it was a hallucination from sleep deprivation, stress, anything. But the wood felt real, cold, heavy, as if it had grown roots while I wasn't looking. Then the humming stopped, and the silence that followed wasn't normal. It wasn't absence, it was pressure, like the house was holding its breath. I took a step backward, slowly, and my heel brushed against something soft. I looked down. A rug identical to mine. Same color, same texture, same slight coffee stain. In the corner from when I dropped a mug last winter. This was a replica of my home. Down to the smallest detail. The pictures on the wall were mine, but the faces had been erased, not scratched out, not burned, just faded, as if they'd never had eyes or mouths to begin with. Just silhouettes in frames. I walked through the hallway with cautious steps, each creak of the floorboard echoing louder than it should. My reflection in the hallway mirror seemed slower to react half a second too late, almost like it was watching me too. I reached the stairs. At the top. Darkness. Total, thick, unnatural darkness that felt alive. That pulsed. I wasn't going up. Not yet. I needed to understand what this place was, why existed, why someone or Something had built a perfect copy of my life in the middle of nowhere, turned into the living room and froze. There was a figure standing in the corner, still, tall, its back to me, dressed in dark. Wet clothes, hair long and stringy like moss, hanging from a dying tree. It didn't move, didn't breathe. I took one step forward. The floor groaned, and it tilted its head slightly, as if listening, not turning, just listening. I took a step back, and it mirrored me one step backward, still facing away, still silent. I ran back toward the door, slammed my shoulder into it. It didn't budge. I fumbled for my phone. No signal. The house groaned, no, moaned. Like it was reacting, like it was aware. I turned toward the kitchen. Same layout as mine. Same exact fridge. I opened it. Empty, except for one thing. Plate. On it, a piece of cake, exactly like the one I'd made on my birthday 2 months ago. Same. Candles. Same uneven icing. Except this one had a single bite missing. My bite. I remember it because I chipped my tooth on a hard candy hidden in the frosting. And on this slice, the candy was visible. Half chewed, I backed away, mouth dry, heart pounding. This place didn't just mimic my life. It recorded it. Every detail, every scar, every moment. I turned around, and there was a second figure now, identical to the first, standing beside it, facing away. Both tilted their heads in opposite directions, like puppets waiting for commands. The sound of footsteps echoed from upstairs. Slow, measured, coming down. I ducked into the hallway closet, shut the door quietly, tried to steady my breathing. Darkness wrapped around me like a second skin. I could hear it. Whoever or whatever was descending the stairs. Step by step, each one closer. The air in the closet grew colder, thicker. I pressed myself against the coats, heart thundering in my ears. Then the closet doorknob twitched. Just a little, and stopped. Nothing. No movement. Then a whisper, right at the door. You don't belong here. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I held my breath for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, the footsteps moved away. I waited a full 10 minutes before cracking the door. The hallway was empty. The front door stood open, just like before. No sign of the figures. No sound, just wind. I ran, didn't look back, didn't stop until I reached my car. The photo was gone from the glove box. In its place was a new one. Me. Standing inside that fake house, eyes wide, terrified. And behind me, barely visible in the shadows, the same figure. Watching, smiling. I burned the photo that night, but the next morning, another had replaced it on my kitchen counter. It wasn't over. Boarded up the windows. Installed cameras. Moved my bed away from the glass. But every morning, I find the same thing. Boot prints in the dirt. Facing the house. And a new photo. Closer. I thought that once the police got involved, it would all be over. That someone would come forward, that the investigation would lead somewhere, or that, at the very least, I could get some sleep again. But that never happened. They never found him. Not the man from the window. Not the one who watched me. Not the one with the eyes that didn't blink. The police asked me questions, over and over. Did I know him? Was I hallucinating? Had I been drinking? They even asked if I had made the whole thing up for attention. I tried to give them every detail. The way his eyes followed me even when I moved. The way he tapped the glass, like it was some kind of message. The way he just stood there, like he had all the time in the world. But none of it led anywhere. 2 weeks passed, then 4. The case went cold, and I went colder. I stopped going to class. I stopped seeing friends. I taped blankets over every window in my apartment, sealed the doors at night with chairs and shelves, and heavy things that I couldn't move in one piece. I bought a camera, then another, then 4 more. Still, some nights, I would wake up and feel watch dot, and when I checked the footage the next day, there was never anything there. Just darkness, static, silence dot. But once, one night, there was something else dot. It was around 3:30 in the morning. I was sleeping on the couch. I hadn't used my bed since that night. The tape recorded the living room, the front door, and part of the hallway. It was quiet at first, just me breathing, wrapped in a blanket like a cocoon. Then, something flickered in the bottom corner. A shape. It was there for 3 seconds, just long enough to make out the eyes. Wide, watching. Then, Gone, I replayed it 10 times. I zoomed in. I enhanced the frame. I printed the still and stared at it under every light I had. I realized he was inside dot, not outside dot. Inside dot. I spent the next days pretending life had returned to normal. But deep down, I knew something had changed in me. I was sleeping with the light on, jumping at every creak, and checking the locks more than I wanted to admit. My friends told me I needed to relax, that it had all been an overreaction. But none of them had stood face to face with a shadow that didn't blink. None of them had heard something whisper their name from the dark. 2 weeks later, I got a letter dot, no return address. Just my name, written in a shaky, almost childlike hand. Inside was a single photo, grainy and dark, but it was clear enough. It was me, sleeping in my bed. The angle was from inside my room dot. There was no note, no explanation. Just that image, burned into my memory. I moved out of that house a month later. I haven't spoken to my former roommate since. Not because of anger, but because I don't want to hear what he might say. What he might remember. Or worse, what he might still be seeing. I sometimes wonder if I really escaped whatever was outside that night. Because lately, when I walk home from work, I feel it again. That same pressure. Like someone's watching from just behind the trees. And some nights, I hear that knock again. Not at my front door, but from the window. 2 floors up dot, and I don't live alone anymore. But my girlfriend swears she never heard anything. She says it's probably just the wind, but I know better, because last night, the photo came back dot, same envelope, same shaky writing. But this time, I was standing. And it happened 2 summers ago, though the memory feels like a rusted blade still lodged in my spine. I was driving cross-country from Portland to New Orleans, taking my time on forgotten highways, the kind that twist through pine forests and abandoned towns. I wasn't in a rush. In fact, I had nowhere to be. After my divorce and the loss of my job, I guess I was looking for something clarity maybe, or just silence. And I found silence. I found too much of it. That night, I had driven longer than usual. The sun had dipped below the trees hours ago, and my headlights were the only thing carving through the endless black. I hadn't seen another car in over an hour. My GPS signal had died somewhere back near a ghost town with a single gas pump. I should have turned around. I should have kept driving, but I saw the neon sign flickering red letters. Rest easy. In. It was the only light in miles. I pulled in, tires crunching over gravel, and saw a squat, 1-story motel with exactly 12 rooms. The parking lot was empty except for a rusted van 2 spots down. The office had blinds drawn shut, but a bell above the door jingled when I entered. The man behind the desk looked up slowly. He had the kind of face you forget, instantly pale, loose skin, thin hair, slicked back too tightly. He didn't ask for ID, didn't even ask how long I planned to stay. He slid me a key with the number 7 carved into it, like it had been scratched by a knife. His fingers lingered on mine when I reached for it, cold and damp. Room 7's down the middle, he said. Try not to wake it. I blinked. Sorry? He smiled, too wide. I said don't make too much noise. Thin walls. I chalked it up to exhaustion. I hadn't eaten since that morning. I just wanted a shower and a bed. Room 7 was right in the center, just as he said. The door creaked like a scream when I opened it. Inside, it was cleaner than I expected. 2 beds, faded wallpaper, and a small television bolted to the dresser. I dropped my duffel bag and went to lock the door. That's when I noticed something that didn't make sense. There were 2 doors. The first, the one I'd entered, faced the parking lot. But on the opposite side of the room, partially obscured by the curtains, was another door. A second exit. It had no knob, just a keyhole. I walked over and tried to open it, but it was sealed shut. Solid. I pressed my ear to it. Nothing. Just silence. At the time, I convinced myself it was just a fire exit. Maybe a shared passage to another room. Old motels had weird architecture, but something about the wood felt wrong. Warped, swollen, like it had been wet once and never dried right. I left it alone and took a hot shower. The water smelled metallic. I lay down on the bed closest to the front door and stared at the ceiling. The TV didn't work, only static. I turned it off. Then came the scratching. Not at the window. Not at the front door. From the second door. Light, like fingernails on the other side. Not frantic, deliberate. It stopped when I sat up. I held my breath. Silence. I should have packed my things and left. But it was late. Maybe it was just the building settling. Or rats, or some kind of pipe. My mind was grasping at any excuse. Because the alternative was that someone or something was standing just beyond that door. Waiting. I didn't sleep much. Every time I started to drift off, I heard something. Breathing. Faint whispers I couldn't make out. I checked the door again. Still locked. Still no handle. Around 4 a.m. I must have passed out. I dreamed of the ocean, but the waves were made of hands. They reached for me, pulled me under, and in the dream, I opened my mouth to scream, and only dirt came out. When I woke up, the second door was open, a crack. At first, I thought it was a dream. The second door wasn't supposed to open. It didn't even have a handle. But there it was, open just enough for a sliver of black to bleed into the room. I stayed frozen in bed, the sheet clenched in my fists. The air had shifted. It was colder. Now, still, like the room had stopped breathing. I slowly got out of bed, every creak in the floorboards sounding like a scream in my ears. I tiptoed toward the door. The sliver of darkness felt alive, like it was looking back at me. I reached out and nudged it shut with my foot. It closed without resistance, but when it clicked, I felt something like a sudden pressure in the room, as if something had been pushed out or pushed in. I checked the lock. Still sealed tight. Still no handle. My hands were trembling. I told myself it must have come loose during the night. A breeze, maybe, even though I knew there was no wind in that dead corridor. I sat back on the bed, heart pounding. That's when I noticed it. Footprints. Wet footprints. They started right at the second door and led toward the center of the room. Then they just stopped. No return trail. No water anywhere else. Like something had stepped in, paused, and vanished. I got on my knees and examined them closely. Bare feet, no shoes. Toes long and narrow. I looked behind the curtain. Nothing. Under the beds. Empty. My bag was untouched. The silence returned like a thick blanket, pressing against my skin. I felt like I was being watched. I wanted to get out. Just grab my stuff and leave. But when I opened the front door, the sky outside was pitch black. My phone said it was 9:30 a.m. morning, but it looked like midnight. The parking lot was the same, Except now the van was gone, and the fog had rolled in, thick and pale, like ash suspended in air. I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. There were no sounds, not even birds or bugs, just static in the back of my head, like an old TV left on in another room. I went back inside and shut the door. Something was off with the room now. It felt ... different, like the walls had shifted when I wasn't looking. I tried the TV again, still static, but now there was something in it. Shapes flickering behind the snow, moving shadows. I leaned closer. A shape grew clearer tall, gaunt with limbs that seemed too long. It stood in a room identical to mine. Then it turned and looked directly at me. I yanked the plug from the wall. The screen went dark. I didn't sleep that second night. I sat against the front door, a chair braced under the knob, and stared at the second door across the room. Hours passed. The clock blinked the wrong time. At one point, all the lights in the room dimmed, then flared, then went out completely. In the darkness, the scratching returned, but this time, it came from inside the room. The scratching didn't stop. It wasn't frantic like an animal. It was slow, deliberate, as if someone or something was thinking between each scrape, each drag of fingernails across wood. My ears strained for any break, but it never came. Just the steady rhythm below me, right under the floorboards. Then it paused. A silence, thick and suffocating. And then whispers. Not loud ones, not even spoken ones. It felt like a voice inside my mind, sliding against my thoughts like oil on water. It said my name, not yelled, not called. It simply ... said it. A long, slow stretch of syllables that felt ancient and hungry. My body locked up. I didn't know how it knew me. I didn't want to. I reached for the lamp beside the bed, useless. It had been unplugged. Or maybe it had unplugged itself. The darkness in the room was complete, suffocating. I backed away and shut myself in the bathroom, locking the door behind me. The silence there wasn't better. In fact, it felt worse, like the space was shrinking. Like I wasn't alone inside it. Then click. The lights came back, but not like before. The bathroom mirror was fogged, even though I hadn't used any hot water. And on that mirror, a message. You opened IT. The letters were smeared like a finger had dragged them through condensation. I stared at them, breathless, heart punching my ribs. I ran back into the room. The carpet was soaked now. No rain outside, no leak, just ... wet, filthy wet. And there were footprints. Not just one pair, but several, dozens, all going in circles, as if something had been pacing, waiting. I grabbed my phone, got no signal. Of course, I rushed to the front door, tried to unlock it, nothing. The deadbolt had vanished. I had locked it myself earlier, I was sure, but now the mechanism was gone. Just a blank space where it should have been. Then, Krieg, the second door opened by itself, not a crack, all the way. And beyond it, wasn't another room, it was the same room, my room, but mirrored, inverted, like a perfect reflection. Except in the center of that mirrored room stood a figure, tall, lean, shoulders slouched. It faced away from me, unmoving, until its head twisted. Around its body stayed still, but the head turned, completely and then it smiled. That same broken smile I had seen flicker across the TV screen earlier. I stumbled back into the bathroom and slammed the door, locked it, held my breath. Then I heard it again. The sound of breath, wet and shallow. On the other side, the doorknob began to rattle, but I hadn't seen a doorknob on that side before. The entire room felt like it had been waiting for me to step. Inside, the walls were a dull, chalky gray, pulsing subtly like they were breathing. The carpet was damp, and a faint smell of rot hovered in the air. I turned slowly, taking it all in, my heart hammering against my ribs. Then I noticed ... There were no windows, no clock, no sound but that humming, which grew louder as I took a cautious step further. The bed, an exact replica of mine, was untouched, but something was underneath it. I crouched, hesitated, and peered under nothing. When I stood up again, the mirror across the room no longer showed my reflection. It showed him, the other me, the one from earlier. His movements were slower now, more deliberate. He tilted his head to the side, mimicking curiosity. But I could feel the malice, the hunger in his stare. He raised one finger to his lips, as if to say, "She." And then I heard something behind me. Footsteps. I spun around. No one. When I turned back to the mirror, he was closer. Much closer. That's when I noticed the scratches, all over the inside of the door. Deep gouges, like someone or something had tried to claw their way out. And above the handle, a word carved violently into the wood: "Stay." A light overhead flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. I fumbled in my pocket for my phone, turned on the flashlight, and the beam landed on a figure in the corner. My double, still smiling. He opened his mouth, and what came out wasn't speech. It was that same humming, only louder. It vibrated in my skull, made my vision blur. I screamed, covered my ears, stumbled backward. My flashlight flickered, then died. Silence. I scrambled to the wall where the door had been. It wasn't there anymore, just endless wallpaper. I pounded with both fists, shouting for help, for anyone. But the room swallowed my voice. Then I felt breath on my neck. I turned, and he was there, inches from my face. But he didn't attack. He whispered one word: "Trade." I blacked out. When I came to, I was lying in my bed, my original bed. The motel room looked exactly the same. Door, window, TV, all normal. The morning sun peeked through the curtains. Was it a dream? But when I looked into the mirror, it was different. It wasn't reflecting the room. It was reflecting the other room. And he was still in it. Smiling. Waiting. I never moved out. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't. The lease ended, and yet I stayed. People always ask why. Why would anyone remain in a place that clearly wants you dead? But it wasn't about choice. The door never let me go. And now, it's not just the door anymore. After that night, the scream, the black mass, the thing with eyes like broken glass and breath like rot. I stopped pretending I was living a normal life. My job ended. My phone died and wouldn't turn back on. Friends stopped answering. Or maybe I just forgot how to call them. Sleep didn't come. Not really. I'd rest, sure. Collapse from sheer exhaustion. But in those hours of unconsciousness, I didn't dream. I relived, over and over. The scream, the scratching. The moment the handle turned, slowly, like something new I was watching. And that's when I noticed. The scratches were no longer only on the outside of the door. They were appearing on the inside too. On the wood, on the walls, on the windows. On me. At first, I thought I was losing my mind, maybe. I was, but then I started documenting, filming, photographing, leaving notes to myself. But every time I reviewed them, the files were corrupted. Smears of static. My voice, distorted into whispers I couldn't understand. But one thing always repeated, a phrase etched over and over in shaky handwriting: mine, but not mine. Let IT in. IDIDN single quotes T. God knows I didn't. But I think that was the problem. You see, whatever lives in that hallway, whatever thing scratched and screamed, wasn't trying to come in to hurt me. It was trying to come in to stop something else, not something already inside. That realization didn't come in a flash. It built up like a tumor behind my ribs. A feeling I was being watched, even in my own mirror. That my reflection sometimes blinked at the wrong time. That the footsteps in the kitchen weren't coming from the hallway, they were coming toward. It. One night, after weeks of silence, the door opened on its own. No scratches, no screaming, just a soft, hollow click. I stood. I stared. My heart beat so loud I could hear it in my eyelids. But I didn't move. The hallway was ... calm. Empty. Like it always had been. That's when the whisper came from behind me. Not the hallway. The living room. A voice like sandpaper in silk. You shouldn't have ignored me. I turned. There was nothing there. But all the walls had begun to bleed. Slow, thin trickles running. From every corner, forming shapes, eyes, mouths, keys, clocks. I backed into the hallway, the apartment behind me now vibrating with a frequency I couldn't hear, only feel. I ran down the stairs, out the front door, into the street. Except there was no street. Only hallway. Endless. Apartment hallway. Lights blinking in sequence like a countdown. Doors on either side, identical to mine. Each one with fresh scratches. Each one breathing. And I realized I never left. I'm still there. That scream, that scratch, it never stopped. I just got used to it. And now you've heard it too. And it knows. It knows. You're listening. And it's waiting. For your door to scream. I was driving through Oklahoma that night, just trying to get anywhere but where I'd been. The road was flat, the sky colorless, and the silence inside the car was heavier than the gravel, crunching under my tires. I didn't have a plan, just a need to disappear for a while. I'd quit my job 2 days earlier, packed a duffel bag, and left everything else behind. There's a point where routine feels like decay. I'd hit that point and kept driving. It was past midnight when I saw the blinking neon sign. Rest Easy Motel, vacancy. The R in rest was flickering like it couldn't decide if it belonged. The place looked like it hadn't seen renovation since the late 70s. 1 story, 9 rooms, all in a straight line. I pulled in anyway. The parking lot was empty, except for a dusty white pickup parked under a broken lamppost. The office door had a bell that jingled softly as I entered. The air inside smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. A thin man in a flannel shirt sat behind the desk, his eyes glued to a tiny portable TV playing static. You open? I asked, even though the door had been unlocked. The man looked up slowly, eyes pale like they hadn't rested in days. You? Want a room? Yeah, just 1 night. He slid a yellowed registry toward me without a word. I signed my name, just my first name, David. He didn't ask for ID or a credit card. Just took the cash I offered, opened a drawer, and handed me a brass key with a faded plastic tag. Room 313. That should have caught my attention. Thanks, I muttered, already half turned toward the door. There's no 313, he said suddenly. I paused. Sorry? He gestured vaguely at the row of doors behind me. Numbers skip, jumps from 312 to 314. But key says 313. Some kind of misprint. I nodded slowly, uncertain whether to laugh or question it. Okay. End of the hall, he added, eyes drifting back to the static on the screen. You'll find it. I stepped outside. The night air was colder than I remembered. I walked along the concrete path, counting. 309, 310, 311, 312. Then, as promised, a jump. 314. But between 312 and 314, there was something. A door with no number, half shadowed by a burnt-out overhead bulb. I looked down at the key again. 313 dotted fit. The door creaked open with a push dot inside. The room was dimly lit by a single wall lamp with a yellowish glow. Faded wallpaper peeled from the corners. The bedspread was olive green, patterned with strange interlocking shapes like spirals and diamonds. There was no TV, just a wooden dresser with a cracked mirror and an ashtray filled with dust. But I was too tired to care. The day had been long. The silence in that room was thick, almost like it wanted me gone. But the bed was surprisingly soft, and my body was heavy. I didn't remember falling asleep, just darkness swallowing me whole. I woke up gasping, not from a dream at least, not one I could remember. Just that choking sense that something was off, that the air itself was wrong. The room was still dim, still quiet, but something had changed. The sheets smelled different. Not bad, just unfamiliar, like I'd never laid in them before. I sat up, my head throbbed like I'd been drinking, though I hadn't touched a drop. The walls seemed closer than before, the ceiling a little lower. I got up slowly, feet touching the carpet. I noticed it immediately. There was a bag in the corner that wasn't mine. Same size, different brand. I walked over, unzipped it. Clothes, neatly folded, but not mine. A pair of worn jeans. A flannel shirt. A worn leather wallet. I opened it, and the air left my Lowe's .id. Credit cards, receipts, all with a name I didn't recognize. Thomas Gray. The photo on the license? It looked like me. Almost, but not quite. I stumbled into the bathroom, flipped on the light. The bulb buzzed to life, casting a sickly yellow glare over the cracked tiles and foggy mirror. I stared into the glass, and the face that stared back wasn't mine. It was close, familiar, like a cousin you'd met once as a kid, but the jawline was sharper. The eyes were a different shade hazel instead of green. The scar on my eyebrow was gone, and there was a tattoo peeking out from the collarbone. I didn't have a tattoo. I backed away from the mirror, my breath catching in my throat. "This is a dream," I whispered, but I didn't feel asleep. I pulled out my phone to call. Anyone, but the lock screen was different. A photo of a dog I didn't know. The time read 4:47 a.m. No bars. No W. I-V. I opened the contacts list. Names I didn't recognize. Not a single familiar face. I went back to the dresser and opened every drawer. All of them empty except the bottom. One, a journal, bound in leather, old and worn. I opened it. Inside were pages of handwriting, all in the same neat cursive. I flipped through, heart racing. Today I looked in the mirror, and I think I saw myself watching me. Sometimes I forget who I was. Not who I am, who I used to be. Before the room. Room 313 isn't on the map. You don't find it. It finds you. I closed the book. The silence around me buzzed, like insects inside my skull. That was the moment I realized I wasn't sure what my own name was anymore. Was I David? Or was I Thomas Gray? The mirror suggested the latter. The ID confirmed it. The memories were slipping. I couldn't remember my sister's face. Couldn't recall my favorite song. My mother's voice was fading like a radio between stations. I sat on the edge of the bed and held my face in my hands. That's when I noticed the sound, not from inside the room, but beneath it. A scratching, steady, rhythmic, like fingernails against wood. I didn't move for what felt like an hour. I just sat there, frozen, listening. That scratching beneath the floorboards wasn't loud, but it was deliberate, like it had a pattern, like it was being done with purpose. I leaned down slowly, pressing, my ear to the worn carpet. The sound was clearer there closer. Someone was beneath the room. Not in the room next door. Not outside. Beneath me, my heart was hammering against my ribs, and I didn't know if I was terrified or on the verge of losing my mind. But then the sound stopped. I stayed still, holding my breath. Then, a whisper so faint it could have been my imagination. "You're not him yet." I stood up fast, stumbling backward into the wall, knocking a lamp to the ground. The bulb burst on impact. I flicked the switch, no response. Darkness swallowed the room. I grabbed my phone. Still no signal, no Wi-Fi. The screen glowed faintly. In the pitch black, and for a second, I thought I saw movement in the mirror again. Not my reflection, but a shadow. Something standing behind me, watching. Still, I turned. No one. I needed to get out. I didn't care if it was a dream, a breakdown, or some twisted setup. I needed air, light, people. I grabbed my keys and wallet, but when I opened the door, the hallway was gone. Instead of the cracked concrete path, I was staring into a narrow corridor, faintly lit, pale green walls. No doors, no windows. Just a straight, endless hallway with carpeting that looked like it had never been cleaned. This wasn't how I came in. This wasn't where I checked in. I turned back. Room 313 was still behind me. The door hadn't changed. Same numberless. Metal plate. Same scratched paint. I stepped out. The door slammed shut behind me. I turned to open it, locked. The key in my pocket no longer fit the lock. I tried jiggling it, ramming it nothing. The air in the hallway smelled like mildew and iron. That's when I noticed it. A flickering light ahead. At the far end of the corridor, I walked with each step. The carpet beneath me felt softer, like it was absorbing weight, swallowing sound. I couldn't hear my own footsteps. Couldn't hear my own breathing. The light grew closer. When I reached it, I realized it wasn't a light bulb. It was a room. The door was open, and inside was a small television playing static, just like in the motel office. And a man was sitting there. From behind, he looked familiar. Hair cropped short, flannel shirt. He didn't move, didn't react. I stepped closer. "Excuse me." The man turned. It was me, but not like the mirror. Not hazel-eyed and almost right. This was me, my face, my clothes, my tired eyes. The exact man who had walked into the Rest Easy motel just a few hours ago. He looked up at me and whispered, "I told you not to sleep here." I backed away. My throat was dry. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. The lights flickered again, and when they came back on, he was gone. The room was empty. No chair, no TV, just peeling wallpaper and dust. I turned and ran back into the hallway, back the way I came, but the path kept going. The corridor didn't end. The air felt tighter, heavier the further I moved. Eventually, I stumbled into another door, this one labeled storage. I pushed it open and stepped inside. It was the lobby. Same desk, same bell, same clerk, but something was wrong. The man behind the desk wasn't watching TV anymore. He was staring directly at me, and he was smiling. "You've seen him, haven't you?" he said. My mouth opened. "What?" "The other you, the one who stayed." I don't understand. Room 313 doesn't give. It replaces. Every time someone sleeps there, the switch becomes more permanent. You can still leave if you don't forget who you are. I shook my head. "This is insane. You're crazy." He leaned forward, and his smile faded. "No, but you will be." Then he pointed to the wall behind me. There were photos. A dozen of them. Old, black and white. Some faded, some torn. All of them had different men, different women, standing outside room 313, all smiling. One of them was Thomas Gray. Another was me. Where did you get these? I asked. I don't get them. They appear. I turned and ran again, through the lobby doors. This time, they opened to a gravel parking lot. My car was there, moonlight overhead. No one in sight. I fumbled with my keys, threw the duffel in the back seat, jumped in and started the engine. It roared to life. I didn't look back. I drove. Fast past the blinking sign. Down the highway. Past towns I didn't recognize. I didn't stop until sunrise. I found a gas station and pulled in. I walked to the bathroom, stared into the... I didn't take the wallet right away. I just stood there, staring at it in the man's hand. It was real. I could see the worn edges, the faint imprint of the initials TG, burned into the corner. But I wasn't Thomas Gray. I wasn't. Think you've made a mistake, I said, voice dry. The clerk tilted his head. Are you sure? It had your picture inside. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Instead, I reached out slowly and took it. The moment it touched my hand, I felt something. Like static in my spine. I opened it. The same ID, same hazel. Eyes, same slightly crooked smile. Thomas Gray. But now beneath the plastic my memory didn't scream in protest. It only whispered. Maybe. I drove all day. Towns passed. Signs blurred. I don't even remember what I ate. Maybe I didn't. The whole drive felt like fog. Like the world had gone slightly out of sync with itself. I stopped at a diner when night began to fall. The waitress poured me coffee without asking. She looked at me too long. You're not from around here, are you? She asked. I shook my head. Just passing through? She paused. That your truck out there? I frowned. No, I drive. I stopped. The memory was gone. What did I drive? Outside the window, there was an old white pickup parked under a flickering STR ETL IGHT. Same model I'd seen outside the motel. Same rust on the door. Same bent antenna. I stood up and walked outside. My actual car, wasn't there. Only the pickup. I fumbled in my pocket. The key fit. It started. Kept driving. My hands gripped the wheel like they belonged to someone else. My reflection in the rearview mirror no longer looked foreign, but I wasn't convinced it was mine either. At a red light, I noticed something. A tattoo on my collarbone, peeking out from beneath my shirt. I pulled the fabric down. It was there. Spiral black ink, coiled like a fingerprint. The same shape I'd seen on the motel bedspread. That night, I checked into another motel. This one looked modern, clean. Nothing strange about the clerk or the room number. I even laughed at myself, nervous and forced. But when I turned on the TV, it was tuned to static. No matter what button I pressed, it wouldn't change. Only the volume worked. Louder. Then a whisper from the speaker. David Gray. Thomas Gray. There is no difference. I yanked the plug from the wall. The static stopped, but the buzzing in my ears didn't. I tried calling my sister. The phone rang. Then a voice answered. Not hers. A man's voice. You were never born. Click. I sat on the edge of the bed for hours, gripping the ID, comparing it to the man in the mirror, to the face in my memory. The lines blurred. I remembered a childhood dog, but couldn't name him. I recalled my mother's laugh, but not her voice. I remembered a photo on a mantle, but not the house. Memories were becoming suggestions. Flexible. REWRITABLE. At 2 in the morning. I heard knocking on the door. I looked through the PEEPHOLE. No one. But on the floor was a note. You left something. In room 313, I left the motel, got back in the truck. I didn't know where I was driving, but every road seemed to lead back to the highway. And after hours, there it was, the blinking sign. Rest easy MOTEL only now. The R had stopped flickering. I pulled in. Same dusty gravel lot, same broken lamp post, same office dot inside. The man behind the desk didn't look up. He was watching. Static again. I never checked out, I said. Still, he didn't look at me. No one does. Room 313? He handed me the key. This time, I didn't count the doors. I just walked straight to the gap between 312 and 314, the numberless door. I put the key in dot. It turned. The door opened. The room was clean, brighter, more modern. Same bed, same dresser, but on the mirror, written in condensation, were 3 words: "We trade places." I wiped it away. The reflection didn't. My reflection stared back, then smiled. I blinked. He was gone. I saw only me again, but the wrong me. Hazel eyes. Tattoo. No scar. I turned to run, but the door was gone. Where it had been was now a wall. Room had sealed itself. The dresser drawer slid open by itself. Inside, another journal. I flipped it open. The first page read, "You've almost arrived. Just one more sleep." I didn't sleep that night. Not in the bed, not in the chair, not even with my eyes closed. Was too afraid that when I woke up again, I wouldn't remember what I was afraid of. The journal lay open beside me. I kept flipping back to that first line. "You've almost arrived. Just one more sleep." The pages that followed weren't dated. Some were written in shaky hands, others in neat cursive. Some used block letters, others symbols. But all of them were talking about the same thing, the trade. I woke up wearing a ring I never bought. He left, but I stayed in his face. Memories are stains. Room 313 scrubs them until you fit. I turned to the back page. It was blank until I touched it. Then, slowly, letters began to form. Not handwritten, typed as if on a typewriter, appearing. One by one. "David Gray, you are still here." My throat closed. I dropped the journal. The light flickered. The walls, they felt like they were breathing, expanding, contracting, like the room itself had lungs. I stumbled toward the dresser mirror, looked into it. This time, there was no reflection, only darkness. And from within it, a voice. "You asked to disappear." I slammed the mirror with my fist. Cracks spread like spiderwebs across the glass. My reflection blinked back into existence, now smiling again. But this time, its lips moved without mine. It whispered, "One more night, and I'll stay." I screamed. I didn't even recognize the sound coming out of me. I had to get out. I searched the room walls, floor, ceiling, tapped each panel, pushed every board. Nothing moved. But behind the dresser, I felt a soft current of air. I yanked it. Aside, there, barely visible in the peeling wallpaper, was a scene, a hidden door. I dug my fingers in and pulled. The panel creaked open, revealing a narrow stairwell descending into pitch black. The scratching I'd once heard from beneath the floor? It was louder now, and it was calling me. I stepped down slowly. The stairs were wooden, wet, and covered in something sticky. With each step, I heard whispers, too many to distinguish. Dozens, hundreds, all speaking at once, all in different voices. Reached the bottom. It wasn't a basement. It was a hallway, lined with doors, each labeled Thomas Gray, Eleanor Singh, Mark Lewis, Rachel Monroe, David Gray. I stopped. My name. My real name. I opened it. Inside, a room identical to 313. Only this one was covered in photos, Polaroids, dozens of them, pinned to the walls. Hanging from the ceiling. Each photo showed a different version of me. Different clothes, different lives, some with children, some older, some missing an eye. One photo showed me smiling in a prison jumpsuit. In the center of the room, a chair on it, another journal. This one was thicker. The cover bore a single word, trade. I opened it. Every page was a different identity. Name, age, face, memories, regrets. All of them scratched out except one. Mine. Under it, status, in progress. I turned the next page. A mirror was glued to the inside cover. In the face that stared back wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone's. It was blank. The door behind me slammed shut. Locks turned. I was trapped. The room went dark, then flickered, then dark again. In the silence, I heard footsteps approaching. From the other side of the mirror, they stopped. The face returned. It was my reflection again, but older. Tired. Smiling. It spoke. I stayed too long, but you still have a choice. I shook my head. I want out. I want my life back. The reflection frowned. Your life is here now. You look too long. You asked too many questions. Now the room remembers you. I ran to the door. Banged on it. Screamed. But the air swallowed the sound. I turned back to the journal. Flipped to the last page. To exit. Forget. To remain. Remember. I fell to the ground. Crying. Shaking. Trying to recall my sisters. Name. My apartment address. My first kiss. My favorite movie. Each memory was thinner than the last. Slipping. Melting. Turning into fog. And through the cracks in the mirror, something was watching. Waiting. Smiling. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe hours. Maybe days. Time doesn't move normally in room 313. Or maybe I don't. I stopped trying to remember things. My mind fought at first, trying to cling to names, to voices, to images, but memory is like wallpaper in that place. It peels away in layers, and underneath, there's just wall. Cold and blank. I opened the journal again. The last page had changed. Now it read, "Congratulations. Your exchange is complete." And beneath that, smaller, "There is a vacancy now." I stood up. Something had shifted. The mirror wasn't cracked anymore. The room looked cleaner, newer. There was a knock at the door. I didn't answer. A key turned. In the lock anyway. And when the door opened, it was me. Or someone wearing my old face. Same green eyes. Same scar on the brow. Same nervous hesitation in the posture. He stared at me, then at the room. "What is this?" he asked. I smiled. I didn't mean to. It just happened. "You found it," I said. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to another room. He stepped in slowly, glancing around like someone entering a dream they half remember. Then his eyes locked onto the dresser, the journal, the mirror. He looked at me again. "Are you Thomas Gray?" I paused, then nodded. "Yeah." I lied, because maybe now. I was. The door shut behind him. Automatically. Softly. Finally. Night. While he slept on the bed, I watched him. From the mirror. I wasn't in the room anymore. I was behind it. Inside the glass. Watching. Waiting. It happens fast. After the second night, he'll forget the smell of his first house, the number of siblings he had, the name of the woman he almost married. I did. There's no pain. Just drift, like a slow dissolve, until the only thing left is a name. Not your real one, just the one the room gave you. Sometimes I see others through the cracks, other rooms, other trades. Some scream, some beg, some whisper prayers. It doesn't matter. 313 doesn't bargain. It selects. And when it does, nothing of you walks out. Only a shape. Wearing your smile. There was a girl once. She almost made it. She scratched her name into the inside of the door. I remember her handwriting. Sharp and desperate. But now, I can't remember the name she wrote. Only that it started with an L. Maybe, this morning, the bed is made again. The journal closed. The key waiting on the dresser. Another guest is coming soon. I can feel them on the edge of the hallway. Their shadow flickers under the door. And when they step inside, they'll see the room, the mirror, the bed. They'll hear the soft hum of silence. They'll tell themselves it's just one night, not just one night. And I'll be waiting. The last time I saw my sister alive, she was laughing. We were in her kitchen, surrounded by empty pizza boxes and cheap wine, arguing over which childhood memory we had remembered wrong. She always swore she was the one who broke Dad's watch. Not me. I still don't believe her. But she stuck to her version until the end, just like everything else in her life. Stubborn and loud and full of light. Her name was Maya. She was 28, was her older brother by 2 years, and 6. Days later, she was dead. It happened just after midnight on a Thursday. A drunk driver, head-on collision, no time to react. They said she died instantly. That's supposed to bring some comfort. It didn't. I got the call at 1:52 in the morning. I remember because I was still awake, scrolling on my phone, unable to sleep for no good reason. The moment I saw unknown caller, I almost didn't pick up. But something made me swipe. It was the hospital. The voice on the other end said words I didn't understand at first. Accident. Critical. No chance to revive. I'm sorry. And then silence. The days that followed were a blur. Calls to family. Funeral arrangements. People hugging me with hollow eyes, saying, she was so full of life, as if that made it better. I didn't cry at the funeral. I didn't cry when they lowered the casket. I didn't cry when I stood in her empty apartment later that week, smelling her shampoo still clinging to the towels. Only cried the first night I realized I couldn't call her anymore. And then she called me. It was exactly 2 a.m. when my phone rang. I was half asleep, the kind of foggy limbo where time feels elastic. A ringtone startled me upright. I fumbled for the phone, looked at the screen. Why my heart stopped. It was her number, her name, her photo, everything. At first, I thought it was a cruel prank. Maybe someone had cloned her SIM. Maybe I was dreaming. But I answered, and I heard her voice. Hi, she said. Soft, calm, just like always. Maya? I whispered. No response. Maya, where are you? Still silence, but she was there, breathing. On the other end, not static, not digital noise. Breathing. And then she laughed. Quietly. Like she had told a joke I didn't hear. And the line went dead. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I stared at my ceiling in the dark, phone in hand, waiting for the call log to show no number, for something to make sense. But it didn't. The call history listed it as Maya to 2 a.m. to 32 seconds. I saved the screenshot. I even recorded a voice memo describing everything I'd heard, thinking maybe I was losing it. Maybe I'd listen to myself in the morning and realize how broken I was becoming. But the next morning, it still made no sense. And the night after, it happened again. 2 a.m., phone rings. Maya. This time. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at it, hand trembling, mind racing. Eventually, I picked up. Where are you? I asked. Nothing. Is this really you? Again, nothing. And a single word, barely audible. And then the line. Cut. I tried calling the number back. Straight to voicemail. Her voicemail. Her real one. The one she used to have. the one I'd forgotten existed. Hi, you've reached Maya. If I didn't answer, it's probably because I'm avoiding something boring. Leave a message. That voice broke me, Dot. I left a message that night. I don't remember what I said. I was crying too hard, Dot, after the third night. I stopped trying to explain it. I didn't tell anyone. Not Mom, not our cousin, Elise, not the therapist I had started seeing again. How could I? What would I say? My dead sister calls me every night at 2 a.m. They'd medicate me, institutionalize me, or worse, pity me, Dot, and in some twisted way. I didn't want the calls to stop. They became a ritual. Every night I would sit in the dark, staring at my phone, and like clockwork, it would ring. 2 a.m. Maya. Sometimes she'd speak, just a word or two. Other times, just breath. Once, I thought I heard waves, like she was standing near an ocean. Another time, birds, but faint, far away. One night, she whispered something that made me drop the phone. Don't look at the photo. I didn't understand until the next morning. Facebook had tagged me in a memory. One of those 5 years ago today posts. It was a picture of Maya, but her eyes, they weren't looking at the camera. They were looking sideways, like she saw something coming, like she knew. After that, I started digging. Old messages, emails, her voicemail inbox, and that's when I noticed something I hadn't before. The time of the accident? 2 a.m. Exactly. The car hit her at 2 hours 0 minutes and 6 seconds a.m. According to the police report I requested later, she was declared dead at 2:03. But the impact, the moment everything ended, was 2 o'clock sharp. The same time she calls. Every night. That couldn't be coincidence. Could it? I started losing sleep. I looked like hell. Bags under my eyes. Constant headache. My friends stopped asking how I was. My boss hinted I should take more time off. I told him I was fine, but I wasn't, because Maya kept calling. And each night, she sounded less like herself. The voice was changing. Deeper. Slower. Like she was getting further away. Or maybe, like something else, was getting closer. On the 10th night, she said something new. He's listening now. And then, a sound I'll never forget. 3 knocks. Loud. Hitting the inside of the phone. From her side. That same night, I heard a knock on my window. I live on the 3rd floor. I didn't move for a full minute after hearing the knock. I just sat there on my bed, phone still warm in my hand, heart thudding like a war drum in my chest. My mind raced to find a rational explanation. Wind, tree branch, maybe a bird. But I live on the 3rd floor. No balcony, no fire escape. Just a flat wall and glass. The knock had come from the outside. 3 distinct, solid hits. Not tapping. Not accidental. Knock, knock. Like someone or something wanted in. Finally stood and approached the window. My legs didn't feel like mine. Each step felt heavier, like I was walking through water. I drew back the curtain slowly, not sure whether I hoped to see something or nothing. There was nothing. Just night. Streetlights spilling amber across empty pavement. But when I looked down, there was a wet handprint on the outside of the glass. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor with my back against the door, all the lights on, holding my phone like a weapon. I didn't dare call anyone. What would I say? My dead sister is calling me, and someone climbed to my 3rd floor window to knock 3 times in Nanish? No, I couldn't say it out loud. That would make it real. By sunrise, the handprint had faded. But at 2 a.m., she called again. I almost didn't answer, but I did. And this time, she said 3 words. He sees you. Then silence. No breathing. No knocks. Just the emptiness of a call that should never exist. I started researching. Not ghosts, not hauntings, Nothing that obvious. I wanted to understand what was happening logically. Maybe sleep paralysis? Auditory hallucinations? Grief-induced delusions? But nothing I found explained the call logs that stayed in my phone. Nothing explained how the number was still listed as hers, even though the line had been disconnected. I called the provider. They told me Maya's number had been released weeks ago. No one should be able to call from it. But the calls still came, every night. 2 a.m., I started keeping a notebook. Every word she said, every sound I heard. The patterns didn't make sense at first. Then one night, I noticed something chilling. The voice I heard wasn't always Maya's. Not entirely. It was slipping. Shifting. One night, it sounded deeper, like someone mimicking her, like a poor recording overlaid with static and something else. Something that growled. I played back a voicemail she'd left me a month before she died. One I'd saved without even thinking. Her telling me to bring wine next time we hung out. I played it 10 times. And I compared it to the last call. It wasn't the same voice anymore. Same words. Same rhythm. But something inside the sound had changed. Like it came from a throat not built for her voice. The next night, I recorded the call. When I played it back the next day, there was nothing. Just silence. The audio file was there. 42 seconds long. But no sound. I uploaded it to my computer. Checked waveforms. The track wasn't flatlined. There was activity, but no audible output. Just a frequency I couldn't hear. I sent it to a friend of mine, Kevin, audio engineer. Total skeptic. I didn't tell him what it was. Just asked, "What do you hear?" He texted me 20 minutes later. "Bro, not funny. Don't ever send me this kind of Shastrisk tea again." I called him. He didn't answer. That night, I dreamed of the ocean. Of standing on a shore made of glass. And from the waves, a figure emerged. Hair dripping wet, mouth open too wide, eyes too dark. Maya. But not. Her body moved like it was fighting itself, like she was being pupet. She reached for me and whispered, "He's almost done pretending." Then I woke up, screaming. My phone rang. 2 a.m. I didn't answer. I couldn't. But the ringing didn't stop. Just kept going. 2 minutes. 3. 5. I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and cracked. Still ringing. When it finally stopped. The silence that followed felt worse. The next morning, I called Kevin again. No answer. I drove to his place. His apartment door was unlocked. Everything inside was normal. TV on. Laptop open. Coffee on the counter. Still warm. But he wasn't there. Just a note on the table. It said, "I heard it." Nothing else. Kevin never came back. That night, I turned off my phone. No calls. No sound. But at 2 a.m., the lights in my apartment flickered. And from the hallway, knocking. 3 times. Not the window. The door. I approached it slowly. Peered through the PEEPHOLE. No one. But when I opened the door, there was a phone lying on the floor. Not my single quotes S. The cracked case with the sticker of that little cartoon dog she loved. I picked it up. It turned on. Only one notification. One missed call. 2 a.m. Unknown. I sat on the floor, staring at that screen until sunrise. I didn't know if I was supposed to answer next time, or if I ever had a choice. I kept Maya's phone. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even unlock it. I just kept it. It sat on my kitchen counter for days, like a dormant animal, quiet but not dead. Every night I stared at it, waiting to see if it would ring again. Every night it didn't. Only mine did. At 2 a.m., like the ritual had transferred but not. Stopped. Night 32. That's when I finally answered again. Her name still lit up on my screen. M-A-Y-A. I took a breath. Tapped. Accept. Hello? Nothing. Just breathing. Heavy. Slower than usual. Not Maya's rhythm. Is this you? I asked. And then I heard it. The voice. Deeper now. Less human. She can't come to the phone right now. I dropped the phone. Not metaphorically. Physically. It clattered to the floor and slid under the couch. I didn't pick it up. I didn't sleep. And the next morning, it was back on my nightstand. I tried everything after that. I changed numbers. New SIM. New phone. Still called. Always at 2 a.m. Always the same name on screen. I switched providers. Same result. I threw both phones in a river. The next night, I woke to a landline ringing. I haven't owned a landline in years, but it was there. An old rotary phone, plugged into nothing, glowing faintly. 2 a.m. I picked it up. No voice this time. Just the sound of sobbing. A woman's, but not Maya. I don't think it ever was. The next day, my neighbor found a phone in the hallway. Same cracked cartoon sticker. Maya's. I had buried it. Literally. I had driven 40 minutes outside town, dug a hole near her favorite hiking trail, and buried it with salt. Now it was back. And charged. Unlocked. I checked the call log. There were dozens of outgoing calls. All to one number. Mine. I started researching again, but not for answers this time, for patterns. I built a timeline. 33 days. 33 calls. Each one brought something back into the world. It started with dreams, then sounds, then smells. Her perfume lingering in rooms I hadn't entered in days. Now it was objects. Phones that couldn't exist. Landlines not plugged into walls. Soon it wouldn't stop with things. It would be people. Or something like them. That night, I locked every door and window. I even pushed the couch against the front door. I sat in the hallway with a kitchen knife and waited. 2 o'clock a.m. My watch ticked to it. No phone rang. Instead, footsteps. From inside the apartment. Soft. Barefoot. Coming from my bedroom. I stood slowly, every hair on my body upright. Then I saw the shadow move across the hallway wall, like someone walking toward me. But when I turned, nothing. Empty. But the lights flickered again. The kitchen radio turned on by itself. Low static. Then music. Song only Maya liked. I unplugged it. It kept playing. Then came the smell. Rain. Not real rain. Her rain. Maya used to say she loved the smell of concrete after summer storms. Didn't even know they had a name. Petrichor. But it was her scent. Unmistakable. I opened every cabinet, checked every room, every mirror. No one. But my phone buzzed. One message from Maya I stared at for minutes before opening. The text said, "Let me in." I deleted the message. It reappeared. I turned off the phone. It turned itself back on. The time, 1:59 a.m. The phone rang for 7 seconds before I picked it up. Maya's phone, not mine. Her ringtone was still the same, that upbeat chime she'd set years ago. It felt obscene, echoing in my silent kitchen. I stared at the screen. Incoming call, 2 o'clock. M unknown, a new MBR. But I knew. I always knew. I answered. Nothing for a moment. Just soft static, like a whisper filtered through fog. Then, you shouldn't have kept it. It wasn't her voice. It wasn't even trying to sound like her anymore. It was low, wet, like something speaking through water. You called her. You brought her back. But not all the way. I gripped the counter to keep from falling. I didn't call anyone, I said. You remembered her too loudly. You refused to let go. And now she's caught between, I whispered. Between what? A pause. Then, me. The phone screen flickered, and for a moment, I saw my own face reflected in the black glass, but it wasn't. Right. My eyes were darker. Sunken. My mouth was smiling. I wasn't. You're not her. I said. The voice laughed. Guttural. Echoing too long. No, but she's still here. In pieces. And then it hung up. I dropped the phone. It didn't break. Wish it had. The next morning, I found muddy footprints in the hallway. Small, barefoot, trailing from the front door to my bedroom. I hadn't left the apartment. No, one had come in. The couch was still pressed against the door, but the chain lock was unhooked. I called a priest. He came. He didn't ask questions. He just walked through the rooms, said prayers, sprinkled water. He asked for her name. When I said it, Maya. The glass on the coffee table cracked. He left before finishing. Said I needed more than prayer. Went to the cemetery. Her grave was still there. The soil undisturbed. But her phone was lying on top of the headstone, fully charged. That night, I made a decision. I would answer one last time, and I would ask, whatever it was, what it wanted. I would end this. Or at least understand it. 1:59 a.m. I sat in the dark, holding both phones, hers and mine. 2 a.m. Mine rang first. Then hers. Both screens glowing. Both showing the same thing. MIY incoming. Callie answered hers. Tell me what you want, I said. The voice that answered was different. Quieter. More human. Maya? I whispered. This time, she responded. He wants a place. A place where? Here. In you. What do you mean? He needs someone real to stay. Someone who remembers me. I shook my head. No, I'm not. But she interrupted. I'm cold. That word again. It sent chills through me. Not just the word, but the way she said it. Like she meant it physically. Like she was still somewhere. Waiting. Trapped. Because I kept answering. Because I kept listening. I want to help you, I said. Her voice softened. Then let him in. I dropped the phone. This time, it didn't ring again, but the walls of my apartment creaked. The lights dimmed. My reflection in the mirror near the door blinked. I hadn't. Bennett smiled. I smashed the mirror. I packed a bag. I left the apartment. Stayed in a motel 3 towns over. No phones, no mirrors, no clocks, but at 2 a.m., the fire alarm went off. Not the buildings. My phones. The screen read, incoming call, Maywaye. The voice on the other end said, you're running, but your memories stay put. Then, let's trade. I don't remember the rest of that night. Only that I woke up in my car the next morning, parked in front of my old apartment building. Her phone on my lap. Battery full. No calls in the log. Only a new voicemail. I hit play. It was her voice. Just 3 words. Come home, please. I told myself I was never going back. After the last call, after the motel, after waking in front of my own apartment with no memory of how I got there, I swore I would leave the city, maybe the state. I told myself distance mattered. That whatever was happening could be outrun. But grief doesn't respect distance, and neither does whatever was calling me. I didn't go home right away. I stayed in my car that day, parked down the block, watching the windows from afar. They were dark, still, lifeless, the way a home looks when someone has moved on or never returned. But I could feel something in there, like the apartment was, breathing, waiting. That night, I drove to Maya's grave again. Her phone was still on the headstone, still powered on, still untouched. This time, it had one notification. New voicemail, 2 a.m. I didn't press play. Left it there. I drove nowhere. In particular. Just away. But every time the clock hit 2 a.m., I would feel it. A pressure behind my eyes. A memory trying to come through. Her voice. or something using it, whispering beneath my thoughts, and no matter where I was. A phone would ring payphones that shouldn't work. Random burner phones abandoned in gas station bathrooms. Once, even a child's toy phone, plastic and pink, in the middle of a thrift store aisle. All of them rang. At exactly 2 a.m. When I answered, it was always the same voice. "Let me finish it," it would say. Or, "You started this." Or, "She's cold because of you." And once, "You made room." Eventually, I stopped running, not because I gave up, because it didn't matter. I returned home 3 nights ago. Everything was exactly how I'd left it. Same mess. Same silence. But Maya's photo, the one on the bookshelf, was turned face down. I didn't do that. I picked it up. The glass was cracked, and her eyes. They were wrong. Not scared, just different, looking somewhere beyond the frame. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the hallway with both phones again. Maya's and mine, both charged, both silent, until 2 a.m. Then they lit up. Both at once, both, saying, "Incoming call, MAY." But this time, I answered both, one to each ear. And what I heard was the same voice, split in half, one soft, one guttural, both speaking at once. "Now we're ready." The lights in the apartment went black. Hallway stretched out, the phones burned hot in my hands. Then, a presence behind me. No sound. Just pressure. And then whispers. So many of them. All in her voice. All saying different things at once. "You left me. I'm still here. You opened the door. He wears your face now." I dropped. The phones, one cracked, the other vanished. I turned, and there she was. Maya. Standing in the dark hallway, soaked, barefoot, eyes wide. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Only static. Her mouth moved like she was screaming, but I heard nothing. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand, pointed at me. Then pointed at the mirror. I turned. My reflection wasn't mine. It was him, the version that smiled wrong. That blinked late, that spoke like Maya in a forgotten dream. He smiled and reached out. From inside the mirror. And touched the glass. It didn't break. It rippled. I don't remember what happened after that. Only this. I woke up in my bed. At 2:01. Both phones beside. M.1 with a new call log. The other with a new photo. The photo showed me. Standing outside the apartment, holding Maya's phone. Smiling. But I didn't take it. I wasn't outside. I was here, wasn't I? Since then, the calls stopped. The knocks stopped. No more whispers. No more static. No more. Maya. Just quiet. Almost too quiet. Like something is waiting. But sometimes, at 2 a.m., even without a ringtone, I pick up the phone anyway. And I say, "I'm ready now." Even though I don't know what I'm ready for. Even though I'm not sure if I'm the one saying it anymore. My son was 6 the first time he told me about Jonah. We were sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by scattered Legos and crumbs from peanut butter crackers. He was building a crooked tower while I half listened, scrolling through emails. From work, already dreading Monday. That's when he said it. "Jonah says I shouldn't stack the red ones on top." I looked up. "Who's Jonah?" He shrugged, not looking at me. "My friend, he lives here." Something about the way he said it, flat, like a fact, made me pause. But I smiled. "Your imaginary friend, huh?" He looked at me then. Not confused, not playful, just serious. "No, Daddy, he's real. He just doesn't talk to you. Kids say weird things. I know that. I've read the articles. Imaginary friends are normal, even healthy. Especially after big changes. And we'd had one. My wife, Lily, died the year before. Car accident. She was picking up groceries. I was late coming home. Caleb was 5. He didn't see the crash, didn't see her body. But grief has ways of crawling under closed doors, doesn't it? Since then, he'd been quiet, withdrawn. His smile came slower, and his eyes sometimes looked too old for his face. So when he finally started talking to someone again, even a made-up someone, I let it happen. Maybe it was healing. But over the next week, things shifted. Jonah became a permanent character in our lives. Jonah says I shouldn't eat the green grapes. Jonah doesn't like the dark. Jonah wants to know what's behind the wall in the hallway. That last one made me pause. What wall? Caleb pointed to the corner near the linen closet. Just drywall and nothing else. Jonah says something's buried there. I laughed it off at the time, but later that night, I stood staring at the spot. The air there did feel cooler, but I told myself I was just tired. I started asking Caleb more questions. What does Jonah look like? He was coloring on the floor, pressing the crayon hard into the paper. He's my size, but paler. Does he go to school? No, he used to, but not anymore. He says schools make people forget. Forget what? He looked up, crayon, paused mid-stroke. Who they really are. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way Caleb said those words. How he mimicked voices sometimes, like he was remembering someone else's speech, repeating something he didn't understand. Then, just before I drifted off, I heard a sound, a thump. Soft, muffled, from the hallway. I got up. Caleb's room. He was asleep, but his closet door was wide open, and the lights were flickering. Next morning, I asked him gently if he'd gotten up during the night. He shook his head. Maybe Jonah did, he said. I laughed, nervously. Then he added, he gets bored when I'm asleep. That's when I started keeping notes. A little journal. Nothing dramatic. Just dates, times, phrases Caleb would say. Because something in my gut told me I wasn't imagining the changes, like the way the temperature dropped every time Jonah was mentioned. Or how our dog stopped going near Caleb's room altogether. Or how the power flickered only in certain parts of the house. A few days later, Caleb asked me a question I still can't explain. Daddy, why did you hide the box under the stairs? I froze. What box? He shrugged. The one with the pictures. Jonah says you are crying when you put it there. I hadn't told anyone about that box. Not even my therapist, It was a small wooden chest of old photos, journals, and Lily's things. I'd hidden it 6 months after the accident, unable to face it, and Caleb had never seen it. I waited until he was at school, opened the crawl space. The box was exactly where I'd left it, under the back beam, behind a stack of old paint cans. Untouched. But when I opened it, there was a new photo on top. One I'd never seen before. Was of Caleb. Smiling. But not in any place I recognized. Behind him, a wall with peeling wallpaper, and a hand, a child's hand, resting on his shoulder. When Caleb came home that day, I asked him about the photo. He stared at it quietly. Then said, Jonah took that one. He says it's his favorite. That night, I dreamt of the house, but it was wrong. The walls were covered in drawings, children's scribbles, stick figures with missing eyes, X's over mouths, symbols I didn't recognize. In the dream, I was looking for Caleb. I could hear him laughing somewhere behind the walls. Then, a whisper, he's not yours anymore. I woke up gasping. The clock read 2 a.m. I walked to Caleb's room. He was sitting up in bed, smiling at the empty corner, whispering, Who are you talking to? I asked. He looked at me. Then said, Jonah says it's almost time. Time for what? He tilted his head. to show you what's underneath. Underneath. What? He didn't answer. Just laid back down, not smiling. After that night, I started locking Caleb's door while he slept. I know how that sounds, but I wasn't locking him in. I was locking something out. At least that's what I told myself. He never protested, never asked why. It was like he understood. Worse, expected it. The next morning, I found him sitting at the kitchen table, drawing, crayons, markers, pages already torn from the sketchpad. He'd been at it for a while. "What are you making?" I asked. He didn't look up. "It's a map." "To where?" He stopped, stared at me. Then whispered, "Underneath." I took the drawing from him gently. It was chaotic, overlapping. Lines, scribbled shapes. But the longer I stared, the more I realized it wasn't random. He had drawn our house accurately. Every room, every hallway. And then something else. A stairwell that didn't exist. A door beneath the house. A room labeled Jonah's place. I folded the page, put it away. I didn't ask more. I couldn't. That night, I checked the crawl space again. I tapped on every board, moved every box, ran my hands along the concrete. Nothing. No doors. No stairwell, but the air. It was heavy, like it was pressing back. I heard a soft sound then, a hum. Childlike. Almost a lullaby, coming from inside the walls. Back upstairs, Caleb was asleep, clutching something. I gently pried it from his hand. It was a photo, one I didn't recognize. An old Polaroid, faded and YELLOW, a D. Of a boy, standing in a dark hallway. Alone, scrawled in pen, Jonah -1994. I looked closer. The boy had Caleb's eyes, but they weren't his. Not exactly. Just close. A cousin, maybe. Or a shadow. The next few days, things escalated. Lights flickering in patterns. Toys rearranged during the night. Whispers coming from the baby monitor, though Caleb hadn't used it in over a year. And always the same time. 2 a.m. I recorded the monitor audio. One night, played it back the next morning. There were voices. Faint. Not one was Caleb's. The other wasn't. He still doesn't believe. He will. I took Caleb to a child therapist. Didn't mention Jonah. Just said he'd been talking to an imaginary friend and drawing strange things. The therapist was calm, gentle. She asked Caleb to draw his friend. He did, and what he handed her was not the drawing of a child. It was a figure, tall, thin, with arms too long and a head that bent sideways, like it was listening. No face, just a mouth. And in the mouth, teeth. Hundreds. The therapist asked, "Is this Jonah?" Caleb looked up. "No, that's who Jonah talks to." We left early. That night, I found another drawing under Caleb's pillow. It was of our house again, but on fire. Smoke rising from the iron. Windows. Figures at the windows. Watching. And one figure outside. Alone. Caleb. Standing in the yard. Smiling. Written in red crayon. Soon. At 2 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. I rushed out, but there was nothing. Until I looked down the stairs. At the base of them, standing perfectly still, was Caleb. In the dark. Looking up at me? "Caleb?" I whispered. No answer. I descended. The steps slowly, each one creaking under my weight. But when I reached the bottom, he was gone. The front door was locked. Every window shut, but he was nowhere in sight. I ran upstairs, heart racing, checked every room. Finally found him. In his closet. Asleep, as if he'd never left. The next morning, I asked him gently, "Did you walk around the house last night?" He shook his head. "No, I was with Jonah." "In your room?" He paused. Then said, "In the space behind the stairs?" "There." Was no space behind the stairs, only drywall, until I looked closer and noticed the faintest seam. I waited until Caleb was at school. Didn't want him to see it, whatever it was. I went to the hallway with a flashlight, a screwdriver, and a claw hammer. The seam he had mentioned was faint, but it was there. A hairline indentation along the baseboard, covered in layers of old paint. I pried at it, the first board splintered, and another dot, and behind the drywall, behind the insulation and dust, was wood. A door. Not a full-size one, small, maybe 3 feet high. Hidden for God knows how long. There was no handle. Just a metal plate, rusted and sharp at the corners. I took a deep breath and pulled it open. The smell hit me first, rot, damp, and something else. Something like rusted iron and wet earth. I pointed the flashlight inside, stairs, leading down. Shouldn't have gone in. Every cell in my body screamed not to. I did, because I had to know. Because Caleb kept whispering in his sleep. Underneath. Underneath. The stairs were narrow, wooden, old. Each step groaned under my weight. The air got colder with every breath. Down at the bottom was a room. Low ceiling, dirt floor, wooden beams, and the walls, they were covered in drawings. Children's drawings, dozens, hundreds, all. In crayon, chalk, charcoal, stick figures with missing eyes, houses on fire, hands reaching through walls, the same crook-toothed figure from Caleb's earlier drawings. Over and over, in the center of the room was a small rocking chair, rocking, slowly, empty, next. To it, a toy phone, plastic, red, covered in dust, but it was ringing. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. I backed away, heart hammering, and climbed the stairs as fast as I could. When I emerged, the hallway was dark, but it wasn't night. The bulbs had all gone out. Everyone. I closed the wall back up, taped it, repainted it, told myself I'd imagined it, that I was sleep deprived, that trauma and guilt were blending together. But that night, Caleb woke me at 2 a.m. He was standing in the doorway of my room, his eyes wide, unblinking. Jonah says you found the room. I sat up, heart pounding. What's in there? He walked toward my bed, sat on the edge. Pieces, he said. Pieces of what? He looked at me, and said, of the ones who didn't listen. I didn't sleep, the next day. I did more research. On the house, it was built in 1924. Records were sparse. But one article surfaced from 1995. Child missing after mysterious fire. Jonah Weller, age 7. The house had once belonged to a family named Weller. There had been a fire. No remains were found. They rebuilt the house on top of the original foundation. The boy was never seen again. I showed the photo to Caleb. Is this Jonah? He nodded. That's how he used to look. I frowned. Used to? Caleb whispered. He changes when he gets hungry. I tried reaching out to a local historian, someone who might know more. But when I explained what I found, she went quiet on the phone, then asked, did your son say the name? What name? Jonah. Yes. A long silence. Then you need to leave that house. That night, the baby monitor came on again, though I had removed it from Caleb's room. It sat unplugged on my desk, but it clicked to life, and a voice said, why did you wake me up? I checked on Caleb. He was asleep, but someone had drawn on his walls again. More stick figures. This time, one of them was lying down, with red crayon all around it. Above it, written in capital letters, Dad. I didn't go to work that week. I told them I was sick, and in a way, I was. Not with something you can treat. Not with something you can measure with a thermometer or a blood test. But I was infected. With dread. With a certainty I couldn't shake anymore. Something was wrong with Caleb. And something was here, living in my home, It started with the mirrors, each one in the house began to fog over every night. No matter how dry the air was, in the morning, I'd find shapes traced into the condensation. Sometimes it looked like symbols. Once it was a stick figure with a line through its throat. Another time, it was a word, hollow. I wiped them clean, but they always came back. On night 47, Caleb started sleepwalking, only he didn't walk. He stood, in the hallway, facing the wall, for hours. I moved him once, gently, trying not to wake him. He whispered something. Without opening his eyes, he doesn't like that. The next morning, all the family photos in the house were turned backward. Every frame, every face hidden. That same night, I found a list on Caleb's floor, written in red crayon. He said it was Jonah's rules. There were 7. Don't go into the house at night. Don't talk to the lady in the wall. Don't break the red string. Don't sleep with your feet uncovered. Don't answer if Jonah says your name twice. Don't say goodbye. Never forget what you buried. I asked Caleb what the last one meant. He said, "You'll remember soon." The house had begun making sounds, not creaks or moans, voices, in the air. Pipes, in the air vents, once, in the static of the baby monitor. I heard my wife's voice, but she wasn't calling for Caleb. She was calling for me. "Please," she said, "don't dig it up." I didn't sleep. I barely blinked. And still, at 2 a.m. every night, the house would breathe, walls pulsing with a pressure I couldn't explain, like they were stretching from inside, like something wanted out. I tried calling the woman again, the historian. She didn't answer. Later that night, I received a voicemail, It was only 5 seconds long, but it was her voice, screaming, on night 51. I followed Caleb during one of his episodes. He walked to the basement, stood facing the hidden wall, and began knocking, once, twice, 3 times. The wall knocked back. I called out to him, "Caleb." He turned, eyes still closed, and whispered, "He wants to see what you look like." I pulled him away, carried him upstairs, the next morning. He didn't remember, or said he didn't. That day, I went into the crawl space again, back, through the little door, down the stairs. The crayon drawings were fresh, new ones. One of them was of me, standing in the hallway. Blood pouring from my eyes, another showed a hole in the ground, and something climbing out of it, smiling, there was a pile of small bones in the corner. Animal. I told myself, maybe, but next to them was a name scratched into the wood. C-A-L-E-B. Under it, another one. Dad, I started digging with my bare hands. Under the dirt, I found a bundle wrapped in black cloth. I pulled it out, unwrapped it. Inside was a drawing, old, faded, but unmistakable, me, holding Caleb. But my eyes were scratched out. That night, the mirrors didn't fog. They shattered, all at once. A symphony of breaking glass, and behind each one, where the wall should have been. Solid, there was a dark, wet hollow, and in each, a face, the same face, smiling, waiting. I boarded them all up, every mirror, every reflective surface. But on night 53, Caleb came to my bed. He was awake, he sat beside me quiet, and said, "Jonah wants to switch now." I swallowed. "Switch? What?" He looked down at his hands, then at me. "He says it's your turn to be the imaginary one." I didn't respond when Caleb said that. I just stared at him, trying to understand what he meant. "It's your turn to be the imaginary one." A part of me wanted to laugh, dismiss it, tell him that he was just a child, dreaming up things because of the trauma, because of grief, because of the lack of a mother. But I couldn't, because his eyes weren't his, they were Jonah's. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. Something about the stillness, the absence of light behind the stare. It was like he was a puppet holding its own strings. He smiled and walked away. That night, I didn't lock Caleb's door. I didn't board up the mirrors. I just sat in the hallway, waiting, at 2 a.m. The door to the crawl space creaked open by itself. Light spilled out, but not flashlight light. A dim, flickering orange. Light candlelight, and I heard humming. Soft, slow, familiar. It was Lily's voice. She used to hum when she cooked, but she wasn't here. She'd never hummed that song. I stepped down the crawl space stairs, back into the room of drawings. It had changed. Walls were painted now, full color, deep and rich. Like a child's mind had exploded and painted the nightmare. The figures were clearer. Dozens of children, some with X's for eyes. Some missing faces entirely, and one in the center, standing over the others. Smiling. Jonah. There was something in his hands. Mask of a man's face, of mine. Caleb was in the corner, sitting cross-legged, rocking slowly. He looked up at me. His mouth moved, but the voice wasn't his. We've decided. You can go now. I'm not going anywhere, I said. The smile widened. Exactly. The floor split. A crack opened beneath me. And I was falling. But not physically. Falling into something cold. Something deep. A memory? No, a reflection. Of myself. But it wasn't me. I saw moments from my life, but twisted. Caleb's birth. But I wasn't holding him. Jonah was. Lily's death. But she was calling my name, not in fear, in warning. And me, staring at a mirror, smiling. As blood trickled from my ears. Then darkness. Silence. And then a voice. You are not the first. You will not be the last. I woke up in Caleb's bed, sunlight pouring through the window. He was at the foot of the bed, drawing. Just like before. I sat up. Caleb? He turned. Smiled. Double quotes. Morning, Daddy. His eyes were normal again. Brown. Alive. I wanted to believe it was over, that I had imagined everything. But when I went downstairs, there was a note on the table, scrawled in red crayon. One sentence. Thank you for your place. I ran to the bathroom. Ripped the boards off the mirror. Stared at my reflection. At first, it was me. Tired, pale, unshaven. But then, the eyes blinked out of sync. The smile came a second late, and the mouth whispered, though mine stayed still. Now he can grow. I screamed, smashed the mirror, but the cracks didn't spread. The glass held, and my reflection didn't break. Later, that day, Caleb handed me a drawing. It was us. Smiling. Holding hands. But behind us, a third figure. Larger. Shrouded in black. Holding strings. And we were both puppets. I asked him, "Who's this?" He looked at me. Like he didn't recognize the question. "That's you, Daddy," he said. "Before Jonah made you real. Now, I still go to work. I still cook dinner. I still tuck him in. But at 2 a.m., I wake up. And listen. Because now I hear Jonah too. And sometimes I whisper back. I hadn't stepped inside St. Amelia's Primary in over 20 years. The building hadn't changed much. Same beige bricks, same rusted playground fence, same crooked Jesus statue over the front entrance. Its left eye always looking a bit off. I was only back because my contracting firm had been hired to do electrical rewiring for the older buildings. Cheap work. Small job. In and out in 5 days, they said. I didn't tell my boss I'd gone to school here. Didn't tell him I used to dream about this place. Didn't tell him why. I still feared it. The first day was quiet. The new principal gave us a short tour, mostly. Administrative wings, the back corridor of classrooms that hadn't been touched since the 80s. Everything smelled like dust and old paper. The lights flickered even when they were off. But it was when we passed the old chapel that something shifted. My chest tightened. The air turned cold, like it always had, and I felt it again, the thing I'd buried since I was 7. Can we get into this wing? I asked the janitor as he led us down the corridor. He shook his head. Chapel's off limits. Been sealed since the 90s. We don't even have keys to some of the inner rooms. Why? He hesitated. Then said, 2. Much rot. Structural danger. Might collapse. But I knew he was lying. He just didn't want to say her name. I saw her once, when I was a kid. Only once. It was after school. I'd forgotten my lunchbox. Came back for it while everyone else was outside for recess. The chapel door was ajar, and from the narrow crack, I saw a woman in black and white, a nun, standing in the shadows with 3 students in uniform kneeling in a circle. There were candles around them. I remember the way the nun moved too slowly, too controlled, like she was being watched, or controlled herself. I ran. Never spoke about it. And a week later, one of those kids transferred out without warning. Or at least that's what they told us. I tried to forget. I did. But I still dreamed about her. And now I was back. And the air around the chapel still smelled the same. Like wax and blood. That night, I stayed late after the rest of the crew had left. Something told me to check the blueprints. I found the originals in the staff room. I unrolled them across the table. Classrooms A through G, chapel on the east wing. But then I noticed something strange. There was a room 13 marked on the blueprint. Small rectangular room adjacent to the chapel. With 1 door. No windows. But when I looked at the wall where that door should have been. There was nothing. Just a smooth stretch of paint, unbroken by any seams. I took a photo of the blueprint. Sent it to my friend Mark, another former student. We'd kept in touch loosely over the years. Do you remember room 13? I asked. He replied instantly. You're kidding. We weren't supposed to talk about that room. I didn't sleep much that night. Too many memories. Too many questions. The next morning, I got to the site early. Before anyone else. I walked back to the east wing, back to the chapel wall. I knocked softly. Hollow. Later that day, I asked the janitor again, what's behind that section of wall near the chapel? He frowned. Nothing. That's just solid brick. Been that way forever. I pulled out the photo of the blueprint. He looked at it, went pale. I've never seen that room on any plans. He said. And he walked away. Fast. That night, I stayed again. Alone. It was a mistake. Around 1:30 a.m., I was rewiring a junction box in classroom D when I heard it. Footsteps. Not heavy. Light. Childlike. Running. Down the hallway. But I was the only one in the building. I turned off my flashlight. Listened. Another sound. A door creaking open. Softly. Then a voice, female, whispering. I couldn't make out the words. Followed it. Down the corridor, past the offices, toward the chapel. When I turned the corner, I stopped cold. The door to the chapel was open, wide open, and I could see candlelight inside. I didn't want to go in. Everything in me said, don't move, don't breathe, turn around now. But I walked forward anyway. Like something had hooked itself behind my ribs and was gently pulling me toward the open chapel door. The light flickered against the cracked tile. Candles. Fresh. The air was warm now, heavy with melted wax and something. Older. I stepped inside. Nothing had changed in that room. Same warped pews. Same crooked crucifix above the altar. Same eerie stained glass window that never let in sunlight, no matter the hour. Only now, there were 6 candles lit in a circle at the front, placed neatly on the floor. In the center of the circle, a child's shoe. A small black Mary Jane, scuffed at the toe. And beside it, a name tag, the kind they make kids wear on. The first day of school. Written in red marker. Emily H. I stood there, frozen, until the flame of one candle blew out by itself. No breeze. No movement. Just that faint hiss of air. Then another, and another, until only one remained. Then I heard it, the sound of children whispering. From somewhere nearby. Not playful, not scared, just watching. I backed out of the chapel slowly, closed the door. It locked with a sharp click, though I hadn't touched the lock. The next morning, I asked the school secretary, Mrs. Collins, if they had any student named Emily H. She frowned, checked her digital records. No, not in the last 20 years. What about further back? She shrugged. We only digitized post-2000. The rest are boxed in storage. I asked if I could check them. She said yes, but warned they hadn't been touched in years. The archive room was in the basement. Dust covered. Boxes stacked to the ceiling. I found one labeled Class Lists 1985 to 1995. Flipped through dozens of yellowing folders. Finally, I found one with the heading 1993, Grade 1. Scanned the names, and there it was. Emily Harkwell. But something was wrong. Her name was highlighted and beside it, in handwriting, withdrawn March 24th, 93. But instead of a parent signature, the space was blank. No explanation. No forwarding school. Nothing. Just gone. That afternoon, I texted Mark again. Do you remember Emily Harkwell? He replied instantly. Yes, she sat behind me. She disappeared. Everyone said she moved, but I never believed it. That night, I went back to the school. Alone. Again. I don't know what I was expecting, but I couldn't stay away. When I arrived, the back gate was unlocked. I slipped in silently. Lights off. Hallways empty. But as I turned the corner toward the east wing, a candle lit itself. By the chapel door. This time, fear didn't stop me. I pushed the door open. The room was empty. No candles. No shoe. No Emily. But there was something new. A note, folded neatly on the altar, written in old, graceful cursive. Only the marked can see her. On the back of the note, a symbol drawn in dark ink. A circle divided in three, like a shattered trinity. Something about it seemed familiar. As if I'd seen it before. As a child, back in the basement, I dug deeper through the archive boxes. Time, I searched for my own name, but the folder labeled 1994, Grade 2, didn't have my file. Not just missing, absent. My name wasn't on the class list, like I'd never gone there, but I had. I remembered the seat near the window, the smell of the library, the day James Porter threw up on the playground. And most of all, I remembered her. The nun. I began asking around quietly. The janitor, an older teacher, a lunch lady who'd been there since the 80s. All said the same thing. This school never had nuns. But then I saw the class photo of 1993 hanging in the hallway. And she was there. In the back. Smiling. Wearing. Black. Hands folded. No name. No face in focus. As if the picture itself refused to remember her. I stopped going home at night. There was no point. I would lay in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, while my thoughts circled like vultures. So I started sleeping in my truck, parked outside St. Emilia's, not really sleeping, just watching. The windows, watching that hallway, watching the chapel. I knew something was coming. I just didn't know if it was coming for me, or for someone else. The janitor avoided me after I showed him the blueprint again. He wouldn't make eye contact, wouldn't answer questions. One afternoon, I saw him muttering something under his breath before unlocking a utility closet, some old prayer, maybe. When he noticed me watching, he shut the door fast and walked away without a word. That night, I broke into that same closet. Inside was a stack of rusted shelves, buckets of rock salt, and oddly 3 Bibles, all open to the same page. Psalm 91. He shall cover thee with his feathers. But it was what I found behind the shelving that chilled me. A shoebox, wrapped in twine. Inside, dozens of missing persons flyers. All children. All former students, none of them over the age of 9. Some dated back to 1983. The most recent, 1998. The flyers were faded, torn. Some had newspaper clippings attached, with words like presumed runaway, no leads, unresolved. But one had a note stapled to it, handwritten, "We were told not to ask about Sister Meridian." That was the first time I had a name, the nun, Sister Meridian. I searched through the basement archives again, looking for staff records. There were lists of principals, teachers, nurses, but nothing on clergy. No sisters. No Meridian. No one who matched her face, though, in truth, I was beginning to forget what her face even looked like. In the photo, she was a blur, and in my memory, she never really had a face at all. The next day, I took time off from the electrical job and drove 2 hours to the Archdiocese office. They didn't let me look at records, but I asked, casually, did the Order of St. Meridian ever send sisters to St. Amelia's? The receptionist blinked at me. What order, Meridian? She frowned. There's no such order, sir. I showed her the name in the flyer. She grew pale. I'm going to ask you to leave, she said, standing. Ma'am, we don't speak of her. That night, I didn't go to the school. I went to Mark's house. I needed to talk to someone who remembered. He opened the door, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. I barely said hello before he muttered, "She's back, isn't she?" I nodded. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he said, "I used to dream about her. But then one day, it stopped. For years. And now, I see her again, in my hallway, in the mirrors, watching my daughter." He showed me his phone, a photo his daughter had drawn. Stick figures, one labeled Dad, one labeled me, and one tall and thin, all in black, no face, labeled the sister. He handed me something wrapped in cloth, an old journal. "I stole this from the principal's office in 7th grade, he said. Never knew why, just felt like I had to. I opened it. The pages were handwritten, in Latin, scribbled, desperate, like someone trying to confess and exorcise themselves at the same time. Recognized a few translated phrases. She feeds on the forgotten. She was never part of the church. The more we erase her, the stronger she becomes." The final page was a list of names, 20 of them. All children. 10 crossed out. 10 still visible. My name was one of them. So was Mark's. Back at the school, the chapel door was open again. Not wide, just cracked. Inside. It was completely dark, but the shadows felt thicker than they should have. Like they weren't just absences of light. I didn't go in. Not yet. Instead, I went to the library. It had always been locked during our job, but I had found an old key labeled South Wing Access. It fit. Inside was dust, silence, and old books, stacks of them, most untouched. But in the far back corner, behind a shelf, was something strange. A book open on a pedestal, lit by a single working bulb. The pages were filled with hand-drawn portraits of children. Each with a name. Each with a short paragraph. None were dated, and all of them ended the same way. The child was chosen. I flipped until I found her, Emily Hartwell. Her portrait was wrong. The proportions were off. Her smile stretched too far. and her eyes were blacked out completely. Beneath her name, vanished during reconciliation. Witnesses, none. Record, removed. And then, beneath that, remembered too long, must be retrieved. The book closed by itself, slamming shut like something had swatted it from above. The bulb went out. I ran. I didn't go home that night. I didn't sleep. I sat in my truck, gripping the journal, repeating one line over and over. She feeds on. The forgotten. At 3:13 a.m., I looked up. The light in the chapel window was on, and I saw her just for a moment, standing at the glass. But her habit wasn't black. It was red stained, and in her hands, she held a single black Mary Jane shoe. They always said there was no room. 13. Even the architect who drafted the school's blueprints in the 1970s signed an affidavit saying there was never a 13th room. But it was there. I felt it long before. I saw it. And on the 56th night after I started the rewiring job at St. Emilia's, I found it. I had returned to the chapel after midnight, not through the front doors. I knew better by now. Went in through the storage crawl space beneath, the east wing, with a foundation cracked against older brick. I'd found the break in the wall 3 nights before, hidden behind stacked hymnals and broken folding chairs. Beyond, it was a tunnel, narrow, low, crawling. Through it scraped my elbows raw. But at the end was a hollow cavity. And in the hollow, a door. Unmarked. Rotting. But there. I didn't touch it at first. I just stared, the flashlight trembling in my hand. The wood was warped and dark, with claw marks gouged across the bottom, like something had been dragged in or kept out. Was no handle. Only a small metal crucifix nailed above it. Bent sideways, pressed my hand against the wood. It was cold. Then, slowly, it opened. By itself. Not a creak, a breathe. Like the door exhaled, the smell hit me immediately. Earth, mold, wax, and something metallic, sharp, sour. Blood. I stepped inside. Room. 13 was real. It was small, no bigger than a janitor's closet, but it stretched downward in ways that defied logic. Like the room folded under itself, spiraling into an old basement that should not exist. Along the walls, shelves, covered in small shoes. Mary Jane's, Velcro sneakers, tiny worn sandals, all neatly labeled. Emily Harkwell, Peter S. Alicia Dominguez, Daniel F. There were over 30 pairs, all dusty, all untouched. Moved deeper. The temperature dropped with every step. My breath clouded in the beam of the flashlight. At the far end, a desk. On it, a leather-bound book. A rosary, a candle still. Burning. I opened the book. It was a ledger, each page marked with a date, a child's name, a time, and a single word beneath. Claimed. I flipped to the last entry. There was no date, only a name. Caleb R. Then below it, pending. I didn't know who Caleb was. Not yet, but something told me I would. Soon. Then came the sound. Behind me. A footstep. Slow. Deliberate. Wood against stone. Turned, and I saw her. Sister Meridian. She was taller than I remembered, almost ceiling height. Her habit was soaked, black turned to a deep brown like dried blood. Her veil hung stiff over hollow shoulders, and where her face should have been, there was nothing but shadow, moving shadow. Eyes opened inside it, not 2, but many, like blinking stars behind smoke. She raised one hand, thin, gray, stretched with bone. She pointed at me. In her voice. It didn't come from her mouth. It came from everywhere in the room. You remember too well. I stumbled back. Fell over the chair, hit the ground hard. She didn't move, just stood, arm outstretched, pointing. Then a second voice, childlike, echoed behind her. He's not ready yet. Another. Don't take him now. More voices. Joined dot children dot from the walls, from the shelves, from the shoes dot whispers dot begging dot screaming dot double quotes. Don't take him. Don't take him. Don't take him. I scrambled to my feet. Dot ran dot. I don't know how I made it back through the tunnel, but I did. I collapsed in the crawl space, gasping for air dot. My hands were shaking so badly, I couldn't hold the flashlight. When I looked back, the door was gone dot, just brick wall, like it had never opened. I left the school that night and drove without thinking. Ended up 3 hours north in a motel off the highway. Slept for the first time in days. Woke up to a note under the door dot folded dot no. Handwriting dot inside, one sentence. You entered without permission. I went back the next morning dot. They told me the east wing had been condemned overnight. Water damage. Collapsed internally, they said. But when I asked about room 13, they looked confused. There's no room 13. I showed them the photo on my phone dot the door, the shoes dot the ledger, but the photo was blank dot, just a black square. Metadata, corrupted. I went to find Mark dot, his house was empty. Furniture gone. Phone, disconnected dot, no forwarding address. Only thing left. Behind, a drawing on the fridge dot crayon dot, 3 stick figures. One labeled ME, one labeled sister, one labeled missing. That night, I drove to the school again, but something was different. Wasn't afraid anymore, not the same way. It was like something inside me had already shifted, accepted. I waited until 2 o'clock. Then walked the halls. The chapel door was open. Candles lit. Stepped inside. And she was there, Sister Meridian, waiting, this time. She spoke with one voice. You are not the first. You will not be the last. Then she stepped aside, revealing the door to room 13 hole. Again, open, waiting. She stepped aside. The door was open again. Room 13, reborn, breathing. And I walked toward it, not running, not hiding, just walking. The light flickered behind the door like a heartbeat. I crossed the threshold, and everything changed inside. It was no longer the storage space I had seen before. It had grown, stretched into impossible geometry, as if the room bent through layers of space. Bookshelves climbed into nothingness. Stairs looped upward and downward, without origin. At the center, a pool of black liquid pulsed like a living heart. Above it floated the ledger. Open. Turning its own pages, one by one. Names glowing faintly, then burning out, then glowing again, and there just below it stood her, Sister Meridian. This time, she had a face. It was mine. Almost like an imitation, built from memory. Except older. Hollow. More tired. And her mouth smiled, but her eyes didn't. She didn't speak. Instead, she raised her hand, and the book descended, stopped before me. A blank page. My name, inked at the top. Below it, returned. What is this place? I asked. My voice echoed too loudly. It didn't sound like me anymore. Her smile deepened. And then she spoke from inside my head, where the forgotten are kept. I felt it all at once. A flood of memory. Flashes. My childhood. The day I wandered down a hallway I wasn't supposed to. The door that opened for me. The darkness inside. The chanting. The shoes. The cold hands around my wrist. And the moment I was pulled back. Someone yelling my name. A janitor. He had saved me. But not the others. I remembered now. I had been taken. Almost. And my name had stayed on the list all these years. Why me? I whispered. The room answered. Because you never forgot. She stepped forward. Her veil dissolved into black mist, swirling in patterns too, complex to follow. She no longer looked like me. She looked like everyone. Children. Teachers. My father. My reflection. Her voice now came from every wall. One always remembers. One always returns. One always becomes. I stumbled back. No. But the ledger flipped again. Names rising, glowing. All marked. All chosen. Some crossed out. One name pulsed brightest. Caleb. R. The floor beneath me cracked. The heart-shaped pool throbbed. The voices of children rose around me again, chanting not in fear, but in rhythm. Calling. Summoning. My head filled with a pressure I couldn't hold back. And in a single instant I saw everything. The rituals. The cycles. Each generation. The child. Marked. The one who sees. The one who survives. Not by accident, but because they are meant to carry it forward. I looked down. My hands were no longer mine. Older. Bonnier. Stained. I reached for my face, but there was nothing to touch. Only fabric. Only veil. Only silence. I was standing where she had stood. The ledger before me. The shoes behind. The candlelight returned. And in the hallway outside, footsteps. Small. Nervous. Coming closer. A child's voice, muffled. Hello? I think I'm lost. My mouth opened, but it wasn't my voice that came out. Come in, child. Don't be afraid. You've been expected. The END. OR not.